It's 900 hours Central Africa time here on the Newsroom, Jumbo Africa. My name is Elvis Preslin.
And I'm Kendall Mahamat.
Eben is not with us, but he'll be back tomorrow. But today, Kendall, we focus on a very important issue, the death penalty.
Yes, capital punishment.
Capital punishment. Now, at the recent ANC policy conference, some members of the Women's League, they pushed for the restoration of the death penalty to address the killing and abuse of women in this country.
And that's why on our poll for today, we want to find out from you, what do you think about this notion? Should the death penalty be reinstated in South Africa?
Well, there are the numbers. 242 votes, and there's an increase in femicide, and 68% of you in South Africa and on the continent of Africa, they say it should be reinstated, the death penalty, that is. 32% are saying no, Ken.
Yeah, no, very interesting. Let's see what the views of our views are. Matthews Maputa comes and says yes and no. Take a look at Botswana. Everybody knows that committing murder or rape there is a death wish. But what if you're wrongly convicted?
Well, that's a good question there, Matthews. Barry Martin says, yes, the death penalty should be reinstated in South Africa because our people's lives means nothing in this country. That's a view from Barry.
Chamlevander's case says with the death penalty in South Africa, the criminals will think twice about committing a crime. It would also scare the chances.
Yeah, looking back at that particular statement there, one of the tweets, it indicates that you could be wrongly convicted, and that has led to, of course, the death penalty no longer be valid here in South Africa. But we also focus on something else. The CRL Rights Commission has released its final report on the commercialization of religion and the abuse of people's belief systems in this country. We've heard about people eating rats and snakes and drinking petrol, eating grass, and that's why we're asking you this question.
We want to find out from you, do you support the regulation of churches in South Africa?
That's the question. Let's take a look at what you are telling us.
TV Police with Tilo says, if churches can freely ask for financial assistance from the public, they must be readily available to disclose their financial statements.
Well, there you have it. Provide the statements, please. Potso says churches feels like they are untouchable. These institutions must be regulated.
And Atin Mbele says, yes, we've seen an increase in people drinking petrol, eating rats and snakes, whilst others rape congregants, confess to practicing witchcraft.
Well, and that's why we need regulation. That's according to Atini Mbana. You can let us know what's on your mind. What do you make of that question? Of course, on the poll, as well as on our Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on our Facebook page.
And today, of course, we also have a sporting question.
Yes,
you know what? It's one of the big moments for me when you say hello. When we talk about whatever's big in the world of sports, and the Proteas women, Elvis.
They're unbelievable, aren't they? Hey,
Yeah.
Up until now, very good play.
Under the radar and got themselves to contend for the ICC Women's World Cup. And they're now in the semi-finals. We want to find out from you, what do you make of the Proteas women's performances so far?
Well, there's a question there as well, Kendall, if the Proteas men's team can learn from the Proteas women. But let's take a look at what our viewers are telling us.
Jemile Vander's case says, not at all surprised. It's actually quite good to see that there's a women's team in cricket and soccer. I'm glad that the female Proteas are good.
Katlejo says, very surprised. Just when our Proteas team, the men that is, are not performing, well, they came and rescued our broken hearts. It's impressive, says Katlejo.
And Barry Martin weighs in on this one as well. Says congratulations to the Proteas women team. That was a beautiful game. Well done, girls, and go on with a good work. An 8-wicket win over Sri Lanka to book their place into the semi-finals of the World Cup.
Well, Barry Martin says the righty girls. So what do you think of that? Now let's get down to our work and take a look at your news headlines today. Police officers have been deployed in a number of taxi ranks in Soweto following a decision to close them down by the Gauteng Department of Roads. The South African Communist Party leadership has requested the party's 14th Congress in Boksburg to endorse calls for the President Jacob Zuma to step down as the President of the Republic. And Communications Minister Yanda Dlodlo has received the Leadership and Humanitarian Award from the civil rights leader and social justice activist in the US, Reverend Jesse Jackson, in Chicago. Now, those are all your headlines, but before we get to your news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the cricket pitch. Very good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Elvis. Thank you very much for that. Good morning to you at home. This is what we have for you in the sports today. At the Women's Cricket World Cup, the captain Dane van Niekerk and Shabnim Ismail star in an 8-wicket rout of Sri Lanka as the Queen Proteas book their place in the semi-finals.
In the air and out. And this time,
Chinro Limau leads the South African 1-2 at the IWF World Youth Championships, underlining the depth of sprinting talent in this country as a new generation starts to emerge.
It's a South African 1-2 with Malenga coming in to take second, but Limau has struck gold in Nairobi.
Match points.
Again, second match Federer.
And he's through to his 12th semi-final here at Wimbledon.
6-2.
Roger Federer is left as the last man standing on the Big Four as he books his place in the semi-finals with a straight sets walk in the park against Milos Raonic.
His name, but that is
All this and more we've got for you later on the Sports Bulletin, around about 10 for you. So do stay with Elvis as he's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. Metro Police, as well as Gauteng traffic officials, are out in full force this morning to enforce the closure of several taxi ranks in parts of Soweto. The routes affected are operated by the Nansfield-Dube West Taxi Association and the Witwatersrand African Association. Commuters are being urged to use alternative transport. The closure follows ongoing clashes between the two associations over the routes. This has resulted in several deaths and many more injuries. The South African National Taxi Council, SANTACO, says that although it does not condone the violence, the closing of the routes is not a solution. SANTACO plans to have an urgent meeting with government to discuss the way forward. Meanwhile, 13 cases of rape and attempted murder are being investigated following the violent actions by the taxi associations. The South African Communist Party leadership has requested the party's 14th Congress in Boksburg to endorse calls for President Jacob Zuma to step down as the president of the country. Now this in the wake of growing discontent over his leadership. The SACP also says its relations with the African National Congress are at an all-time low. This is revealed in the party's State of the Organization report, which was tabled at the Congress. Meanwhile, Bladen Nzimande has retained the SACP's General Secretary post for a fifth term. He was re-elected last night. There was also minimal changes to the rest of the Communist Party top leadership. The former Central Committee member, Chris Mahlako, takes over from Solly Mapaila as the second Deputy General Secretary of the party. Mapaila has been promoted to the position of the first Deputy General Secretary, previously occupied by Jeremy Cronin. Cronin did not avail himself for another term. Senzeni Sokwana has been retained as the national chairperson, Tulas Nesi as the deputy, while Joyce Malloy Maropa remains the national treasurer. Mapaila supporters had hoped that he would challenge Nzimande for the general secretary position, but the popular SACP leader says there was no need for a contest of positions. Now, Aldrin Sampier is at the Congress, and he earlier spoke to Bladen Nzimande, the General Secretary, on the sidelines.
Thank you and good morning. We agree with the Deputy President that the Commission must be set up as a matter of agency. It does not mean that those who feel that they must take the Public Protector's report for a review have no right to do so. But we are saying that should not be an obstacle to setting up the commission immediately. Because the sooner we have this commission getting into the bottom of corporate capture of the state, things continue to just go haywire. I mean, these daily emails, revelations that are very embarrassing, you know, and they're actually hurting us as a movement, as well as the image of government. That is why we must actually be seen to be doing something as soon as possible. You know, we are of the view that a way will have to be found to actually overcome whatever seems to be the obstacle in setting up the commission, so that we don't have this perpetual excuse, you know. If we set this commission this time next year, I wonder where our image as a country would be by then.
What's the danger if the delay in setting up the commission continues?
the danger is that you have got these details that are emerging, which are hardly being contested, by the way, about these illicit parasitic networks involving the Guptas together with their associates in our movement and in the state. It actually is going to lead up to a situation where we look like a country that's paralyzed. In another country, some people will be facing trial at this point in time, you know, given what has actually come up. So this thing is actually just going to destroy the image of our organization.
The Deputy President yesterday spoke about protecting the sovereignty of the country, and he says that the state capture is a threat to the sovereignty of the country. Are you at all disappointed in the approach of President Jacob Zuma? You once have called for the president to publicly distance himself from the Gupta family as well.
We are indeed very disappointed, you know, that there is no firm leadership around this issue to actually give our people hope and confidence that these things are not going to happen. This is one of the things that has caused the SACP to take the stance that it has actually taken, that we never in our wildest dreams thought that a country like South Africa, whose people fought such a heroic struggle against an evil system like apartheid, would actually end up handing over the country to a family to do as it wishes, you know, and also including, by the way, ravishing our sovereignty. Like the landing at the Waterkloof base, that was the worst, you know, in terms of the image of our country as a sovereign country.
And in terms of the relationship of the SACP and the ANC, if you read through the discussion documents of the SACP, you speak about how in 2007 there were hopes that the relationship between the SACP, COSATU and the ANC will be strengthened. And when you delivered the political review report, you spoke about how betrayed you feel as the SACP. Is it because of, I don't know, the role of President Jacob Zuma that you feel betrayed?
Well, look, we had lots of hopes, you know, in the wake of the Polokwane conference in 2007. That some of the things we were seeing going wrong, that we were unhappy about, as the SACP will actually get corrected. It started okay, you know. But as the political report of the Central Committee says, by 2014, we started seeing things that we had thought actually were not going to happen. You know, there is a faction at the moment that is in charge in the ANC, which is operating very brazenly as they were doing at the ANC policy conference. And nothing is being done about that. The president, who have approached him as the SACP to say, distance yourself from this faction, try and unite the organization. No, nothing is happening, you know. It's like business as usual. It's not that it's a secret. It's something that is well known. It looks like it doesn't care. Some of them, they tell us what's wrong in having a relationship with the Guptas. There is everything wrong. That's why we hope this Congress will come out calling for the cutting off of the relationship between government and the Guptas.
You, as the party, has taken a decision calling on President Jacob Zuma to step down. One of the questions that I've always had in my mind is that, for instance, you are cabinet minister, we have the deputy chairperson of the party as well, also being part of cabinet. Have you guys, as SACP members who are in cabinet, ever gone to President Jacob Zuma and told President Jacob Zuma to step down instead of calling on him to step down from podiums?
No, I don't want to give details about that. Myself, I have engaged the president many times, and it was confidential engagement, so I'm not at liberty to actually share that, raising concerns on behalf of the SACP in particular.
Now, legendary musician Ray Phiri will be granted a special provincial funeral. Now, this is in honor of his contribution to the music industry. Phiri passed away yesterday after battling lung cancer. Tributes continue to pour in for the veteran musician who was the front man for Stimela, the steam train. Now, Arts and Culture Minister Nathi Mthethwa says that Phiri contributed immensely to the country through his music during the struggle against apartheid.
A music icon, Ray Phiri was born in Mpumalanga in 1947 to a Malawian immigrant worker and South African guitarist nicknamed just now Phiri. He became the founding member of the Cannibals band in the 70s. When Cannibals disbanded, Phiri founded Stimela. It's then that he conceived gold and platinum albums that saw him scoop many awards, including the Order of Ikamanga in silver.
The family today, it's shattered. There is not much we can say except that we have all lost, not only the family, but everybody in South Africa. We have lost a legend.
Back in the Mayfen village where Phiri was born and bred, community members are devastated. He used to perform for free at this community hall. Mtofi Makubela, who went to the same primary school, remembers how Phiri's career took off.
Ray Phiri.
His father taught him to play guitar. Ray then went to perform at Shippings. That's where his music career took off.
Everybody would say, living on a farm, you can't achieve your goals. But yeah, here's Ray Phiri. Ray Phiri's been to places where we've never been to.
Those who loved his music want his legacy to live on.
His music appealed to the young and old, so we're gonna miss him a lot. May his soul rest in peace.
Ray Phiri's memorial service will be held on Saturday and his funeral service on Tuesday. He leaves behind his 3 sisters, his mother and children. Mweli Maslela, SABC News in Bombela, Mpumalanga.
Yes, indeed, he will be sorely missed. Ray Phiri, absolute legend in the music industry. Meanwhile, Power FM sports journalist Abisa Musia has accused Mzwaki Mbuli, the people's poet, of being a funeral scam artist. Now, Musia recalled scam allegations made against Mbuli in 2016 after the passing of Mendoza. He has also warned that the double dealing may be overlooked by Phiri's loved ones because he is a close family friend. Now, to reply to Musia's allegations, we're now joined on the line by the people's poet himself, Mzwaki Mbuli. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Good morning, yeah.
Before we get to the allegations, first tell us about how do you remember Ray Phiri?
I would always remember him as a fearless musician who stood against the might of apartheid regime. He is a man that was prepared not to be intimidated by either the presence of the security police. His music had substance and relevance. The lyrics were nation-building, morale boosting, and we did a project that never, was given an airplay because it was titled "The People Want Mandela." It is a project that was similar to USA for Africa. But again, when he started the campaign against music piracy, he was instrumental and fully supportive. When we went to the SABC in the 97, 96, 7, 8 period, Jonas Gwanda and all of them, late Jabu Kanyil and them, he was part of us. When the PRASA celebrated its 5th anniversary at the Joburg station, it was more appropriate. It's Itimela and the process about train. So I made sure that they performed at that function. So, but be that as may, this is the man whose music and Itimela as a group made a huge contribution in the liberation struggle because I'm talking about the period when leaders were in exile and also in prison.
Mm-hmm. Now, what role will you be playing during Ray Phiri's funeral?
I have no role to play because I'm not part of the family. I'm part of the music fraternity. I'm ordinary, a mourner, like anybody else as people are paying tribute to Ray Phiri. I think I need to give you a background. 2 weeks back, Maralo called saying that Ray Phiri's condition was terrible. I was alerted by that fact. And only yesterday, then one was bombarded with all these calls. So much as one was receiving lots of calls for interviews, I made sure that I contacted Mutsei Komani, the former manager of Stimela. I spoke to Tapelo Homo, the keyboard player, spoke also to Jabu Shibu, the bass player. And even when I came to SABC yesterday, I even said a condition that I would love to do these interviews knowing that members of Stimela have been approached or contacted. Then later in the day or in the morning, we got a call, 2 different offers. One came from Maralo Bataung that want to assist the family, and the Brudi's funeral parlor that did Guguzulu, Joma Fellow's funeral. They said at no cost they wanted to make sure that they offer their services to give Ray Phiri a decent funeral. But as I was watching the news, even family members saying that the government in Mpumalanga would like to do a provincial state funeral, which is fine. That's where I can say. But there's nothing, there's no role that I'm playing except me remembering that, by the way, we soldiered on with Ray Phiri.
Now, you are seen as a close family friend, but Power FM sports journalist Tabiso Musia has accused you of being a funeral scam artist and has advised the Phiri family to avoid at all costs allowing you to be part of the funeral arrangements. How do you view these accusations?
They are malicious. I think unless we are dealing with attention seekers here, they are malicious. How do you define me like that? Because a funeral is not planned, death is never planned. No one knew about Ray Phiri that was going to leave us so soon. And again, I'm not part of the family. And then again, to label me that, I think it's not for me to entertain people who want to divert attention. Currently, in terms of African tradition, the nation is mourning. We should focus on that, not something else that will actually move the focus from the main event and the main happenings as we speak. So the people, when there is a death, they observe that period. So who am I to? I've just heard another, sometimes you as matured people, if people insult you with something that you are not, you don't have to worry because you are not what it is alleged that you are. So how can you label me a con, what is this, con artist or whatever? So I don't have to entertain that now, because and again, I don't have to. I had to find out who is this
Now, I want to continue with what he says. He says, that's Musia now, the sports journalist from Power FM. He says that he witnessed an incident in which you demanded 70,000 Rand during Mendoza's funeral arrangements to organize a sound system, when in fact, Arthur Mofokati had already offered a sound system for free. Is this true?
It is not true. You know, the church itself, Grace, has got its own sound system. If, for example, what you are saying on air, that 70 was paid, then there would be an invoice and somebody would say, I made them to pay that. Instead, that was not paid because these churches are built in with their own sound system. And I need also to say that. I think if the arts and culture housing that actually secured the venue, which is a Grace Bible Church. So the allegation was like, it's me. So if anybody has got information, for example, I never paid under apartheid to this day for a funeral I don't charge. So when I'm being made a program director, it's worse because more job than just reciting a poem. I don't charge. I did not charge. So the program was run, even was faxed to me, in fact, emailed to me by Arts and Culture official called Bongile Besani. So whatever happened, I cannot go and impose to any family, whether Lundi or Mendoza or Ray Phiri, and tell them what to do, how to write the obituary and the program. It never happens. I can never impose myself that. So instead, I was approached, in the case of Mendoza, is both the family of the wife and the family of Mendoza that requested me, even despite the fact that it was in the media, that it happened a week before I was supposed to go for a voice op. But I had to do it knowing that I had strange. I did something against the doctor. But be that as it may, the allegations are malicious and false. I don't think we should entertain that. Currently, we should focus on the death of either Brajoli Meko, either Ray Phiri, or Peter Mbubane, people who have to be buried on Saturday, and other one coming week. But look, say, I am not prepared really to entertain this. Because if this is the issue, the Mendoza families have written to me letters of a vote of thanks from the wife to the senior Shabalala families, thanking me of how I handled the funeral itself. So look, I can't now, the following year later, how many months now, somebody will come and say, some other people must avoid me. Avoid me in what? Because I think I can even safely say to you that, when Lundi died, there was this thing that I hope Mbuli would make sure that even Lundi himself gets similar or big publicity like Mandoza, which we pumped and did our best, and exactly that happened. Currently, there are people who were saying, please give us a break. We don't want a stimulant music type on the airwaves, vis-a-vis overseas music. Suddenly, I don't see those people coming forward saying, now instead they are celebrating Ray Phiri. Yet, this very same year, we were being accused that want people to listen to South African music vis-a-vis overseas music.
Now, Ray Phiri wrote that song and he performed it very well, Whispers in the Dark. And unfortunately, social media as well as Twitter does not whisper in the dark. It's very loud and clear. And then the question would be then to you, Mr. Mbuli, shouldn't you then avoid playing this organizational role when it comes to funeral preparations of artists and that you just should be a mourner?
Yeah, there is no role that I've played. It's on record. I only appeared on Mandoza's funeral. I was requested by both the family. I remember even the father of the Mandoza's wife emphasizing me, saying there is Kid Mabuto. I gave them names on the table that there are people who are capable of becoming program directors because I have a voice problem. I was supposed to go on a voice operation, but they emphasized that I should play the role. So I stayed away from Lundi. I stayed away from Sifiso. I've stayed away from Thandi Tlasin's funeral. I was in the background. So that is the role I would play.
Mr. Mbuli, I thank you so much for your time and all the best of luck with whatever is going to take place right now. And, of course, condolences to you being very close also to Ray Phiri and the family.
Thank you very much.
That was Mzwaki Mbuli, the people's poet, giving us his thoughts on the buzz that's currently happening on social media and the arrangements taking place in relation to the funeral of Ray Phiri. In news abroad, former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. You remember the Lula moment? Now he has been sentenced to 9.5 years in prison. The country's first working-class president was found guilty of accepting $1.2 million in bribes from the engineering firm OAS. It's the highest profile conviction yet in a sweeping corruption investigation that has rattled Brazil. Prosecutors say that OAS spent the money on refurbishing a beach apartment for Lula. In return, Lula was expected to help OAS win contracts for the state oil company Petrobras. The graft trial was the first of 5 that Lula faces. He will remain free on appeal. Communications Minister Yanda Dlodlo received the Leadership and Humanitarian Awards from the civil rights leader and social justice activist in the U.S., Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. in Chicago. Now, this was on the sidelines of his annual Rainbow Push Coalition convention in Chicago that seeks to promote education and economic justice around the globe.
Honor for me. I mean, to receive an international award for leadership is something that I'd never dreamt of as a kid. I never dreamt of even now as an adult.
I imagine the leadership part comes from the work you did in the Open Government Partnership as the Deputy Minister of Public Service and Administration. I mean, South Africa was lauded for that role, and essentially what the Open Partnership, Government Partnership is making government more responsive to their citizenry. How would you articulate that response in terms of the South African government today?
Well, I was one of the founding members.
Correct.
Well, being South Africa, and the President appointed me as his envoy to the OGP. And I've been with them since 2011, really throughout my tenure as Deputy Minister. And, I think I'm forever grateful to the President for having given me that opportunity, but also grateful to the nations that were part of the OGP that really gave me the platform to be who I am, to put up with my radical views at times. But it's something that really, I think, from what Jesse Jackson and others have seen, it made them think that here's a global leader.
Well, that's your news for now. Let's now take a look at what's happening on Twitter. And we start off with the tributes that continue to pour in for South African jazz legend Ray Phiri, who passed away yesterday after battling with cancer. Advocate Darlene Porful says the loss of Ray Phiri so soon after Johnny Mekwa marks an incalculable loss for the nation and the arts. And then artist Simpiwe Dana Firebrand says that Stimela, the steam train, was the heartbeat of South Africa. Stimela, no other band has influenced South African politics as they did. There you have it, there from Firebrand. Then the team climbing Mount Kilimanjaro set off for their great adventure yesterday. Last year, the race car driver, Gugu Zulu, died while trying to summit. And this year, his wife will climb once again in honor of her late husband as well as for the cause. Hashtag Trek for Mandela. You must support them. Go on to that hashtag and support our team. Our reporter is also with them, Gillian Pillay and cameraman. Then, in some global news that is rather alarming, a trillion-ton iceberg has broken away from Antarctica. A 193-kilometer crack has developed over several years in a floating ice shelf. Scientists have yet to confirm the direct link between global warming and this iceberg breakaway. However, they do say that this does call for maps to be redrawn. This is one of the largest icebergs in record history. Hashtag Antarctica there. And it seems that Mother Nature is in her full element. Firefighters battled to control the wildfire that broke out in Italy, Mount Vesuvius. However, it raised great concern as it gave the impression that it was a volcanic eruption. Look at that, hashtag Mount Vesuvius. And in other news, in the run-up to one of the most anticipated MMA fights between Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor, they bantered at a public conference earlier this week. However, people are talking about McGregor's custom-made suit, the pinstripes. Apparently, actual words. Unfortunately, we can't show you what they said, but go and have a look at just how far these fighters are willing to go to make a scene. And look at McGregor making a scene. Doesn't look like a boxing match, it's more like a clowning session to me. Well, there you have it. Go and have a look. Now, a picture of the day comes from Asterix, and it's captioned, "The large iceberg in Antarctica cracked off yesterday, but hashtag climate change isn't real, right?" Hashtag Cult45. You can ask that from the US President Donald Trump, whether now he thinks climate change is real. Comment of the day, this comes from Farrell Last, who says Mount Vesuvius is on fire and a chunk of Antarctica just fell off. This is not a metaphor. Everything is fine. Yeah? Is it? Well, let's come back home and take a look at what's happening in our courts. Let's start off in Cape Town. A group of Woodstock residents served with eviction notices are expected to return to the Cape Town Magistrates Court to stop their eviction from a building which is earmarked for redevelopment. The matter was postponed last week after their legal representative asked for the City of Cape Town to become involved. The City of Cape Town is expected to hand in a report today on its ability to assist the families with alternative accommodation. A number of families were handed eviction notice earlier this year to vacate the building before the end of May. Well, it's now in July already. Still in Cape Town, a 31-year-old man is expected to appear in the court allegedly after stabbing and robbing a boy in a park in Goodwood. The 12-year-old boy was playing in the park with friends when the man approached them. The boy was stabbed more than 30 times and robbed of his cell phone. The suspect is expected to appear in the Goodwood Magistrates Court on charges of attempted murder and robbery. These are some of the stories we'll keep you updated happening in our courts. Now tomorrow, let's take a look forward at what's happening. On our show, we will be unpacking the South African Communist Party Congress. Well, you heard there was no real changes, only one. Mapaila is now the first Deputy Secretary. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back after that. We start off with our theme, of course, the introduction of capital punishment. Well, the question is, should it come back or not? Let's take a look at that when we come back.
Kilimanjaro, majestic and mysterious, 27 climbers, 5,895 meters, 5 days, trekking in honor of Madiba and for underprivileged schoolgirls. In just 5 years, millions of sanitary towels have been distributed countrywide. The target, to reach 2 million needy girl children by 2020.
It's time that as men, we must actually pick one sanitary pack.
We can touch one girl through this initiative.
SABC News will again be documenting the arduous expedition. The climbers have one goal in mind: to pledge support for a month's supply of sanitary pads, SMS Gillian or Tabo M to 42513. The South African team hopes to summit Uhuru, Africa's highest peak, on Madiba's birthday, July 18th.
Welcome back. Now, we're asking you on our poll today whether or not the death penalty should be reinstated in South Africa. Let's take a look at that poll and where the numbers stand as we speak. 296 votes in as we speak. There is 67% of you in South Africa as well as the continent of Africa that are suggesting that the death penalty must be reinstated in South Africa. 33% are saying no, it should not be reinstated. We'll have that discussion in a short while to find out about that. Now, the reintroduction of capital punishment in South Africa is back on the public domain. Some members of the ANC Women's League pushed for the return of the death penalty in a desperate attempt to stop the murder of women and the increased femicide in our country. Speaking on the sideline of the ANC's 5th National Policy Conference, the Women's League brought the death penalty as a topic for discussion. The death penalty was declared unconstitutional, as you can recall, in June 1995 in that famous Constitutional Court judgment of the State versus Makwanyane, that it violates the right to life as contained in the Bill of Rights. On the contrary, human rights consultant and former deputy chairperson of the South African Human Rights Commission, also a former member of the United Nations Human Rights Committee, Dr. Zonke Majodina, says that the death penalty is no answer to women abuse. She is with us in studio. Doctor, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning, Elvis.
First and foremost, I would like to get your thoughts on the call by the African National Congress's Women's League for the death penalty to be reinstated. Your thoughts?
Let me begin with the founding provisions of our Constitution, which states that South Africa is a democratic state founded on a number of values. I won't elaborate. I'll just mention fundamental rights and freedoms. Now, the right to life is one of those rights, and it's the basis for the Constitutional Court judgment that you've just mentioned that declared that the death penalty is unconstitutional. So from a human rights perspective, I do not agree that the death penalty is an answer to all of our social and moral problems. In the first place, it violates the very values on which South Africa is founded as a democratic state.
But Doctor, others would argue that femicide is increasing in this country, the abuse of women is increasing. Why do you feel that the death penalty is not the answer for, or a solution rather, to the killing of women in our country?
As I've stated, I disagree completely because that is a violation of the right to life, and the Constitutional Court has elaborated on this quite extensively. I do understand the desperation of women. I myself am aware that, we have reached staggering levels of brutality against women in this country, and it's understandable that they would think, not just the Women's League, but other sectors of society would think that the death penalty is a legitimate way in which to address all of the social ills in this country. But it cannot protect. The death penalty has never been shown to protect any society.
As a proponent of a no death penalty, is there any country in the world that you're aware of where the death penalty is working currently as a deterrent?
No, not that I know of. And I say this from 8 years' experience of serving as a member of the UN Human Rights Committee, where we monitored human rights, including the right to life and its violation by means of the death penalty. I cannot recall, I might be wrong, there might be, but from studies done everywhere in the world, not just in one country. I mean, the death penalty is still in the statutes book in the US. And I do not, I haven't come across any credible study that shows that the death penalty has brought down levels of crime. In fact, it does the opposite.
Expand?
Well, in the sense that it brutalizes society, right from the justice system, the criminal justice system itself, the executioners. South African society, as it is already brutalized. Can you imagine what happens if we further formalize the killing of people? You know, the very values that our Constitution is against.
Just take us back and remind us as to why the death penalty was abolished in South Africa, because some people don't realize why.
Well, there are many reasons, and as I said, the main conclusion of the Constitutional Court was that it is unconstitutional. But this is against the background of course, South Africa
a very violent
applying,
history.
Yes, a very violent history indeed, where a lot of people were executed, in some cases, where in fact there was no justifiable evidence for that. And as you know, coming from a race-based history, death penalty was applied disproportionately and indiscriminately against black people. So I mean, in the 1980s, hundreds of people were killed.
Yes.
I think in 1980 alone, more than 600 people were killed. Some of them were killed in the former homelands, purely for being political activists. So it is a dark history in our life that I think the Constitutional Court judgment brought a complete stop to.
Now, Doctor, we are asking our viewers today, of course, whether or not the death penalty should be reintroduced. Let's take a look at those numbers. And of course, people are also tweeting us on this particular subject. Let's take a look what they are saying to us. This one coming from Jamila van der Schuyf. She says, if South Africa has the death penalty, then there would be less criminals. The crime rate would be reduced and the citizens would feel safer. This one from Mystic Man, he says, why wasn't it abolished in the first place? Well, it was. Wasn't it Ubuntu? Then who is going to press that killer knob every day? Well, that's a good question. Unless the victims decide on their own fate. Mystic Man Malachi. This one coming from Siafana says, yeah, well, yes, we are tired of crime in our country. Well, Doctor, these are some of the comments that we've solicited from our viewers in relation to the death penalty. So if the death penalty, in your view, is not the answer, what other alternatives are available to stop femicide and the abuse of women in our country?
You see, the many voices calling for the death penalty, I think are trying to get away from the real issues here, the real problem. And that is addressing what is wrong in society and what needs to be done. And this is an obligation not just on government, but on all sectors of society. From addressing the socioeconomic ills of poverty, inequality, unemployment, to
that triple-headed demon that's keep on giving us a nightmare here in South Africa.
Exactly, and it's not unrelated to this high crime level. So we cannot just want an instant solution without going through this pain of addressing both the legacies of the past and what we're faced with. Yes, indeed. I mean, crime has reached unprecedented levels. It's frightening. There's no safety on the streets. But again, public officials have got to see to it that there is a modicum of safety for all citizens, not just for women. We also have to look at the very criminal justice system, which of course is where most of the death penalty statistics come from. You know that conviction rates in this country are so low.
Yes.
People get away with murder, literally, in the literal sense of the word. And I also want to go back to a question, a related question you posed earlier, and that's to do with the fact that the criminal, we must not assume that a man who kills a woman has rationally calculated the consequences of his action. Yes. Men kill, and in our case, usually under the influence of drugs and alcohol. And again, studies have shown that men who have been, who have been imprisoned and interviewed say that they just cannot control that impulse. They just are unable to,
So it seems like rehabilitation is not also working then.
Yes, indeed, but I think going back to those calls where I said that they are really not, they're underestimating the extent of the problem.
Yes.
And which is all of these measures, a comprehensive strategy. So, national strategy on all sides, because if you have a criminal justice system that is functioning well, you will not have these low conviction rates. When a woman approaches a police station and lays a charge, she needs to be given the due assistance by the relevant officers.
So it's a comprehensive approach.
It's a comprehensive
all perspectives.
And you also have women victims being re-traumatized, not just by officers, but even in those rehabilitation centers for victims of women. I just said the other day that a woman went to a Tutuzela center and she was turned away.
And that should not be allowed. Doctor, but that's all the time we have, unfortunately, but thank you so much for joining us here in studio.
Thank you.
That was the human rights consultant, Dr. Zonke Majudina. She's also the National Commissioner, Rights of Refugees, Asylum Seekers and Migrants, Policy Commissioner. That's a longer version, see, she mentioned to us a little bit earlier, but there you have it. We'll take a short break, but we will be right back after that, continuing with this discussion. Your thoughts are welcomed. Now, during the apartheid era, South Africa had one of the highest execution rates globally. Solomon Ngobeni was the last person to be officially executed in South Africa in November 1989. Then President de Klerk declared a moratorium in February 1990, and the death penalty was finally abolished in South Africa on June the 6th, 1995, as it was in direct conflict with the new South African Constitution. Over more than 20 years, South Africans seem to think that this ruling might have been wrong. National Institute for Crime Prevention and the Reintegration of Offenders, NICRO, has been yearning for the opportunity to comment on the call to reinstate the death penalty and its stance on crime and punishment. NICRO's National Advocacy and Lobbying Manager, Vanessa Padachi, is in our Cape Town studio this morning. A very warm welcome to you and welcome to Newsroom.
Thank you, Elvis. Good morning to the viewers.
Now, Ms. Padachi, NICRO strongly advocates for a problem-solving rather than a punitive approach. Your stance on the death penalty?
Well, the death penalty's cry is not a new one, Elvis. I think we need to take that seriously. It is a cry from the public to say that crime and violence has reached unprecedented levels. So I think we need to take note of the cry of the public, and it's a very serious issue. And it's time we have to be more rigorous about our strategies and how we deal with crime and violence. But NICRO's position is that the death penalty is not necessarily the answer. It is the quick solution that we may think may answer our problems, but actually we've got to delve deeper into terms of understanding why we have this unprecedented levels of violence.
Delving deeper, but do you see this perhaps, this call for the reinstatement of the death penalty by the South African public, because they experience crime on a daily basis? We've seen increased crime against women and especially femicide. Is that not perhaps the issue that we need to focus on?
Yes, no, absolutely. I mean, our communities are crying out. It is unacceptable that we have children, women, men being killed on a daily basis. So the reality on the ground is very serious, and it's quite dire. I mean, we as NICRO, we work on the ground, we work with communities, we work among people, and we see how desperate they are for a solution. But we don't think that the death penalty is the solution.
What is the solution then, from NICRO?
Well, yeah, well, I guess my previous colleague from the South African Human Rights Commission mentioned about the root causes of crime. Now, NICRO's worked in this field for over 100 years, and we're social workers, so we specialize in understanding human behavior and in working with people who've committed crimes, you know, to try and understand why people commit crimes. Now, we cannot deny that poverty, unemployment, inequality, these are all contributory factors to crime. It doesn't cause crime, but it does put pressure on communities with incredible stresses that they face on a daily basis. And I think, Elvis, what's important is what we found out is the whole issue of respect for human dignity. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when I first started at NICRO, it was about respect the dignity and worth of every human being. And when you look at what human beings need, they need acceptance, they need belonging, they need love, and they need someone to believe in them. And we've had thousands of offenders come through our programs, which are more community-based programs, and turn their lives around. So when we look at communities and you drive out there, I've been working in community recently with gangs, and you see people sitting on the street corners without a purpose. Now, another thing is every human being has value and a purpose. Without work, there is no dignity. So the huge unemployment rates, people need to work because they feel depressed, worthless. They turn to drugs and alcohol. It's what you see on the ground it's a decay of our society. And people need to be, we need to tap into that. And I think that respect of human dignity is key in how we deliver services and how we deal with people at every level, including in the criminal justice system and in prisons.
Now, I would agree with you.
That's what can turn around.
I would agree with you that dignity is, of course, the ultimate. But we see a number of repeat offenders. People are suggesting that the rehabilitation programs in prison does not work, will not work, does not work as it stands. But what are then the other solutions if that is the problem?
Okay, we need to understand why is rehabilitation not working in prison. South Africa boasts, the white paper on corrections, which is one of the most progressive papers on corrections. And the issue is that our prisons are overcrowded. Why are prisons overcrowded? Because we incarcerate far too easily. We send all kinds of people to prison, including those who commit shoplifting and economic crimes. And we believe, yes, violent offenders who are dangerous to society do need to be kept away for some time to be able to deal with them. But those who commit petty offenses can be diverted out of the system. They can be dealt with, no consequences, but dealt with through community-based initiatives. Because we're sending too many people to prison, so we cannot rehabilitate because there's just not enough people, correctional officials, or to be able to deal with the overcrowding issues. And there's other rights violations that happen as a result of overcrowding. So once again, the respect and dignity of a person is denied, and those persons never turn around to become better individuals. So we cannot do it unless we re-look at how we're dealing with crime and conflict in our communities as well. People turn to the criminal justice system for every conflict. And yet we need to teach communities and mobilize communities how to deal with conflict among themselves. So, how to build peace amongst people and on the ground. Because
just in closing, Vanessa, the death penalty for NICRO is not the answer.
No, it's not the answer, and research has shown this, that it's not an effective deterrent. In countries like the US, for example, they say even the murder rate went up by 32% when states instituted the death penalty. So the Constitutional Court has ruled on it. When the Constitutional Court ruled on it, the death penalty was still a public cry out at that point. And I think we're not going to be able to turn it around if we legitimize killing in order to, to say that murder is unacceptable. So as a state, we cannot do that. It will violate every right to respect for dignity.
Wonderful. Vanessa, thank you so much for your time and joining us.
Thank you, Alex.
That was the NICRO National Advocacy and Lobbying Manager, Vanessa Phiri, in our Cape Town studio. According to NICRO, it does not work. But right now, it's time to take a look. Getting very hot here in the studio. So let's find out from the weather what's cooking.
Hello there, it is time indeed to take a look at what is cooking in terms of the weather. We've been hearing a lot about the Larsen Sea or the breakage in the Antarctica regions, but not to worry about that. It should not have much of an impact in your everyday life or your everyday weather. Right now, we're expecting a bit of rainfall along the coastal parts of South Africa, especially for the Eastern Cape Coast, as well as over KwaZulu-Natal, and possibilities of clouds moving up north towards Zambia, definitely towards DRC, and a bit of rainfall also coming in tomorrow towards the Eastern Cape province. And what's also coming by Saturday and Sunday is possibility of snowfalls just along Lesotho highlands there, and a cold front will be coming your way on Saturday from the southwestern part as usual, and bringing cooler conditions towards the Western Cape province. This is the temperature situation for this afternoon: 23 for Upington, 24 for Pretoria. A bit of a chilly day towards Sutherland. Yeah, please do make sure you have your coats ready. It's going to be quite cold for the southern part of Northern Cape province, as well as the interior of the Western Cape and the Eastern Cape. So be prepared, and for the weekend coming up as well, it's going to remain quite chilly. 24 for Bulawayo with possibilities of clouds coming up towards Maputo at a maximum of 23 degrees. A very cold day for Luderitz, only reaching a maximum of 17. All those in Madagascar, well, things are looking pretty cool for you there. Antananarivo is at 18 degrees. The good news is it's going to be sunny like most parts of South Africa. But then again, some clouds are coming your way there in the interior of Zambia as well as over the DRC. And all those are going to be in Lusaka. Temperatures for you at 22 degrees. Kampala is at 26, 31 for Juba, and Banjul at 32 degrees. A bit of rainy weather now situated towards that northeastern interior and also along the west coast. Definitely you should expect rainfall for you there. And then some partly cloudy skies are expected towards Chad, Sudan, and for all those are going to be in Eritrea. Morocco might see some clouds as well, but it's just going to be quite hot and possibilities of dry weather along those parts. Tripoli at about 35, 37 for Agadez, and the hottest one being Mecca at 43 degrees. And finally, just to wrap it up, West Africa, lots and lots of rainfall coming up along the interior there. So make sure you've got your umbrella or get your raincoat on if you're going to be on one of those Amatatu there. That's it for now. Stay tuned. There should hopefully be more weather later.
we live with this threat of violence. This is a strange and weird thing, if you come to think of it. So we don't live in a society, which is where the question is. We want to live in a society where we trust that we will not be violated.
A man abducted her from a taxi rank in Baragwane.
He would have taken me and killed me. He would have shot me while I was running, you know. But none of those things happened. And, you know, even if I didn't believe in God, like, this is a real miracle.
How does the police unit of family violence follow new crime trends?
Station crime intelligence will from time to time present the crime pattern analysis and the crime threat analysis. We respond to those.
For all investigative insights, stay tuned to Special Assignment every Saturday at 17:30.
Yes, it's a hot day here in studio with us, 23 degrees, Simunari said a little bit earlier. It's getting hotter here in studio, Kendall, because the focus is on the death penalty, and there's a lot of people saying that it should go. That's why we're asking that question, of course, on our poll.
100%. We'd like to find out from you, do you think that the death penalty, do you think it should be reinstated in South Africa?
The numbers suggest that it should. 317 people in South Africa and on the African continent says 68% of you are saying yes, the death penalty should be reinstated. 32% are saying no.
Yeah, it should be very interesting to see how you back in these figures up. The tweets that are coming through are as such. Power says, when you murder someone, you should lose your right to live.
Eye for an eye. Sipashli Sichle says, criminology findings are that the death penalty doesn't prove a deterrent for murderers, but rather just a societal revenge avenue.
Dr. Prince Chaga says, yes, I strongly believe this will reduce the number of murder cases. Killers will think twice before committing crimes. Go for it. Support it.
Well, there you have it. As you heard from our guest as well, that this is not a deterrent at all. So we'd like to find out from you about the other issues. The CRL Rights Commission has just released its final report on the commercialization of religion and abuse of people's belief systems. Now, we've seen churches in the past, Kendall, people are drinking petrol, they've been ordered to eat grass, all sorts of shenanigans within the religious sector.
Yeah, performing sexual acts for supposed blessings from the Lord. You know, that's why we want to find out from you. Do you support the regulation of all churches in South Africa?
Because the CRL want those churches to be regulated. Let's take a look at what you are telling us.
El Mariachi comes in with regulation is good, but taxation is fair and positive for all.
Siafana says, yes, I support it, and all those churches that are making more money, they are supposed to pay taxes. So says Siafana. Mboro won't agree with you on that one, Siafana.
Yes, that's your team Ramaphosa says. It must be regulated because it's become a money-making scheme now, especially our brothers from West Africa, and some South Africans have also joined. Well, very interesting. You know, can you really regulate ignorance and the way people think? Surely you should be able to judge for yourself what's enlightened and what's not.
Now that would be the question. You have to judge for yourself. But we're also asking a sporting question. On a lighter note, the Proteas women team, fantastic performance thus far.
Yeah, phenomenal. They've stood out and they've become a radar and a beacon for hope for South African cricket fans. Just as the men falter and stumble out in England, the women are doing it for the country. Yes. And they've gotten themselves in contention for the ICC Women's World Cup 2017, having beaten Sri Lanka by 8 wickets yesterday. They're now in the semi-final.
That's why we're asking you that question. What do you make of their performance thus far in the World Cup, the Proteas women's team? Let's take a look. Are you tweeting us?
Let's hope we've got some thoughts on how well these women are doing out there. The Queen Proteas, as I'd like to call them now.
Nazim says, no, I'm not surprised because they have been playing well before the World Cup. So Nazim has been following.
Very good on you, Nazim. Alex says the Proteas ladies are doing better than I thought. Keep up the good work, girls.
That's one coming from Mystic Man. I'm not surprised. They are capable. The hard work, teamwork and passion gives them good results. Go Protea. Hit hard. We're really behind you. Those are some of your comments. You can keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. But right now, let's get down to business and take a look at your news headlines. Police officers have been deployed in a number of taxi ranks in Soweto following a decision to close them down by the Gauteng Department of Roads. The South African Communist Party leadership has requested the party's 14th Congress in Boksburg to endorse calls for President Jacob Zuma to step down as the President of the Republic. And Communications Minister, here's a good news story. Ayanda Dlodlu has received the Leadership and Humanitarian Award from civil rights leader and social justice activist in the U.S., Reverend Jesse Jackson in Chicago. Wonderful award there. But before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Elvis, thank you very much. Good morning to you. This is what we've got planned for you in the sports bulletin coming through at 10:40. At the Women's Cricket World Cup, captains Nefa Nikak and Shabnim Ismail star in an 8-wicket rout of Sri Lanka as the Queen Proteas book their place in the semi-finals.
In the air and out. And this
Senelo
time...
Limau leads the South African 1-2 at the IAAF World Youth Championships, underlining the depth of sprinting talent in this country as a new generation starts to emerge.
It's a South African 1-2 with Malenga coming in to take second, but Limau has struck gold in Nairobi. Match points. Again, second match winner. And he's through to his 12th semi-final here at Wimbledon.
6-2. Roger Federer's left as the last man standing of the Big Four as he books his place in the semi-finals with a straight sets walk in the park against Milos Raonic. All this and more at 10:40. Do stay with Elvis as he's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. Metro Police as well as Gauteng traffic officials out in full force this morning to enforce the closure of several taxi ranks in parts of Soweto. The routes affected are operated by the Nansfield-Dube West Taxi Association and the Witwatersrand African Association. Commuters are being urged to use alternative transport. The closure of the taxi rank follows ongoing clashes between the two associations over the routes. This has resulted in several deaths and many more injuries. The South African National Taxi Council, or SANTACO, says although it does not condone the violence, closing the routes is not a solution. SANTACO plans to have an urgent meeting with government to discuss the way forward. Meanwhile, 13 cases of murder and attempted murder are being investigated following the violent actions by the taxi associations. The South African Communist Party leadership has requested the party's 14th Congress in Boksburg to endorse calls for the President Jacob Zuma to step down. Now, this is in the wake of the growing discontent over his leadership. The SACP also says its relations with the African National Congress are at an all-time low. This is revealed in the party's State of the Organization report, which was tabled at Congress. Meanwhile, Nzimande has retained the SACP's General Secretary post for a 5th term. He was re-elected last night. There was also minimal change to the rest of the Communist Party's top leadership structure. Mapaila's supporters had hoped that he would challenge Nzimande for the General Secretary position, but the popular SACP leader says there was no need for a contest of positions. Now, reporter Eldrin St. Pierre is at the Congress, and he spoke to the General Secretary, Nzimande, on the sideline.
Thank you and good morning. We agree with the Deputy President that the Commission must be set up as a matter of agency. It does not mean that those who feel that they must take the Public Protector's report for a review have no right to do so. But we are saying that should not be an obstacle to setting up the commission immediately. Because the sooner we have this commission getting into the bottom corporate capture of the state, things continue to just go haywire. I mean, these daily emails, revelations that are very embarrassing, you know, and they're actually hurting us as a movement, as well as the image of government. That is why we must actually be seen to be doing something as soon as possible. You know, we are of the view that a way will have to be found to actually overcome whatever seems to be the obstacle in setting up the commission, so that we don't have this perpetual excuse, you know. If we set this commission this time next year, I wonder where our image as a country would be by then.
What's the danger if the delay in setting up the commission continues?
The danger is that you have got these details that are emerging, which are hardly being contested, by the way, about these illicit parasitic networks involving the Guptas together with their associates in our movement and in the state. It actually is going to lead up to a situation where we look like a country that's paralyzed. In another country, some people will be facing trial at this point in time, you know, given what has actually come up. So this thing is actually just going to destroy the image of our organization.
The Deputy President yesterday spoke about protecting the sovereignty of the country, and he says that the state capture is a threat to the sovereignty of the country. Are you at all disappointed in the approach of President Jacob Zuma? You once have called for the president to publicly distance himself from the Gupta family as well.
We are indeed very disappointed, you know, that there is no firm leadership around this issue. To actually give our people hope and confidence that these things are not going to happen. This is one of the things that has caused the SACP to take the stance that it has actually taken, that we never in our wildest dreams thought that a country like South Africa, whose people fought such a heroic struggle against an evil system like apartheid, would actually end up handing over the country to a family to do as it wishes, you know, and also including, by the way, ravishing our sovereignty. Like the landing at the Waterkloof base, that was the worst, you know, in terms of the image of our country as a sovereign country.
And in terms of the relationship of the SACP and the ANC, if you read through the discussion documents of the SACP, you speak about how in 2007 there were hopes that the relationship between the SACP, COSATU and the ANC will be strengthened. And when you delivered the political review report, you spoke about how betrayed you feel as the SACP. Is it because of, I don't know, the role of President Jacob Zuma that you feel betrayed?
Well, look, we had lots of hopes, you know, in the wake of the Polokwane conference in 2007. That some of the things we were seeing going wrong, that we were unhappy about, as the SACP will actually get corrected. It started okay, you know. But as the political report of the Central Committee says, by 2014, we started seeing things that we had thought actually were not going to happen. You know, there is a faction at the moment that is in charge in the ANC, which is operating very brazenly as they were doing at the ANC policy conference. And nothing is being done about that. The president, who have approached him as the SACP to say, distance yourself from this faction, try and unite the organization. No, nothing is happening, you know. It's like business as usual. It's not that it's a secret. It's something that is well known. It looks like it doesn't care. Some of them, they tell us what's wrong in having a relationship with the Guptas. There is everything wrong. That's why we hope this Congress will come out calling for the cutting off of the relationship between government and the Guptas.
You, as the party, has taken a decision calling on President Jacob Zuma to step down. One of the questions that I've always had in my mind is that, for instance, you are cabinet minister, we have the deputy chairperson of the party as well, also being part of cabinet. Have you guys, as SACP members who are in cabinet, ever gone to President Jacob Zuma and told President Jacob Zuma to step down instead of calling on him to step down from podiums?
No, I don't want to give details about that. Myself, I've engaged the president many times, and it was confidential engagement, so I'm not at liberty to actually share that, raising concerns on behalf of the SACP in particular.
Now, Prophet Paseka Motsoeneng, also known as Mboro, has threatened to sue the CRL Rights Commission. The leader of the Incredible Happenings Ministry revealed this following the Commission's recent recommendations on the regulation of religion in the country. Among its recommendations, pastors evading tax must be held accountable. During the intensive hearings, Prophet Mboro was among those who refused to produce bank statements before the Commission.
Personally, I don't recognize them because they are in a campaign to destroy my church, to destroy the Church of Jesus Christ, charismatic, faith-healing churches. She made lies, first of all, that I said I went to heaven. And for who is she protecting if she will campaign? Now there's a lawsuit coming for her and the Commission. They need to apologize and reverse all those things that they've spoken. She is there to destroy. And legally speaking, I'm meeting with my legal team on Thursday. And then soon you'll hear, she got a letter from my lawyers to say she must apologize. She didn't. She's been given 2 years to apologize. She's not doing that. She's continuing with her mission to destroy. Togo Xaluva in this commission will not succeed to close down Christianity.
Now, we'll come to that particular question, but I'm asking you a question this morning. We'd like to find out from you. What do you make of this? Do you support the regulation of all churches in South Africa? That's the question we have for you on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. You can respond to it. Let's take a look at what you're telling us. This one coming from TV Police with Tilo. He says, they forever asking for money from the general public, but they never disclose what the money is used for. It's called accountability, says TV Police with Tilo. This one from Lamudi says, yes, 100% I support them. Let them explain their lavish lifestyles. And this one from Sipeshisle says, in the interest of society, institutions that woo the public need to be regulated by the state and operate under the law. Now, those are some of your comments. I'll come back to some of them because we continue our discussion on the issue of religion and churches and whether or not they should be regulated. Now, every religious practitioner in this country must be registered and fall under the umbrella organizations. Every registered religious leader should have a location where he or she conducts religious ceremonies, and this could be churches, homes, mosques, temples, even mountains, open fields and tents. These are some of the recommendations made by the Commission for the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Communities, in short, the CRL. The Commission presented its report to Parliament following its investigation into the commercialization of religion and abuse of people's belief systems. However, the recommendations have been met with some resistance in some quarters. The Freedom of Religion South Africa said it was not persuaded that licensing of practitioners was the way to go. Joining us now in studio is Ms. Toko Nonhle Mkwanazi Kaluva, the chairperson of the Commission for the Promotion of Rights of Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Communities, or the CRL Rights Commission. A very good morning to you, ma'am, and welcome.
Morning.
Now, we've gone through this a number of times, but now you've produced your report. Firstly, take us to the report and what are some of the key recommendations?
Some of the key recommendations, as you've mentioned, we're saying, number one, every religious leader must be registered, duly registered, with an umbrella organization. First and foremost, you must belong to one. There are many, like your South African Council of Churches, CLEFA, SOSIC, Great Commission. There are many that exist from different formations. So be a member of one. And that one umbrella organization is the first port of defense, where they will guide you, train you, capacitate you in how to run an institution. Teach you about the laws of the country, about when you pay taxes, how you do this, how you do that. And if you are out of line, they are the ones who will discipline you. And we're saying there's a second level of defense in case the first one fails, what we call a peer review committee, which is also religious leaders, no state involved. That will then be the second level where you can appeal as a religious practitioner, etc. But that's when a decision is taken to say, okay, maybe you're suspended because of what you've done, or they ask for you to be removed from the register of religious leaders in the country. And then they'll inform the CRL Commission that you must be removed. We'll check and see if all procedures have been followed and take the final decision and make the relevant recommendation to say, Pastor Kaluva, you are now being removed from the role. You cannot perform this kind of career choice anymore. But if you wish, of course, you can take us on review, judicial review.
So this will actually give access to the public to see whether or not a pastor or a church is registered.
Exactly.
And give them peace of mind.
Give them peace of mind.
There's one gentleman that's not very happy with you. Your response to Prophet Paseka Motsuneng, a.k.a. Mboro's accusations, of course, and that you haven't responded to them and you have not apologized to him, and that he's taking you to court in relation to the report.
We are saying this is we're a country, a democratic country. If you feel your rights have been harmed in one way or another, you have a right to go to court and let the courts decide how these things work. But we remain convinced that he has no case whatsoever. And we are going to go ahead until he actually does it. As he says in the clip, his lawyers asked us to apologize for the thing that was in social media about him going to heaven or whatever. We said we had nothing to do with that. All that we did was that because we felt there was a harm to the religion, there were serious allegations, we asked him through a summons to come forward and explain whether this is fake news or real. He refused to come. We went and laid charges at the police station. So his matter is sub judice, basically.
Chairperson, what do you think in relation to the compilation of the report, the biggest problems within the South African religious sector?
It's mainly the exploitation of poor people, the exploitation of people who are already suffering. Maybe you've got illness, maybe you're not advancing as fast as you had hoped, maybe your children are not getting jobs. The whole issue of poverty, inequality and unemployment is brought into the whole discourse because people become more desperate, more gullible, because they feel that their lives are not moving forward. And then comes a particular pastor who then promises you heaven and earth and tells you, if you do this, God tomorrow will give you a job. God tomorrow will make you equal to those you see who are now higher up. And of course, if you're desperate, you're easy to mislead. And then if you are someone who wants to exploit others, you see an opportunity and you get in there and you exploit them. And for us, we feel it's abusing the religion itself.
Yes. But it's not only Pastor Mboro who is not happy about the recommendations by the CRL. The Freedom of Religion, they are also suggesting that the report will not curb the problems and the exploitation that you are referring to.
We are saying we want to professionalize this particular sector. Doctors have their own, health professionals, counsellors, lawyers have their own. Everybody is being managed by their peers. That has nothing to do with freedom of religion. It can't be freedom of religion that says, I'm free to feed people snakes. I'm free to do whatever. Don't interfere with my thing here in my
Don't look
church.
at my books.
Yes, but you see, what we're saying is, let their peers say to us, This is outside the doctrine. This is exploitation. And we feel freedom of religion as in South Africa as an NGO. They are misunderstanding, or they've chosen to misunderstand what we're saying. Professionalizing the sector has nothing to do with the doctrine. The problem is not in the Bible. The problem is with the individual who has taken a particular career path to be a pastor, a reverend, or whatever, who is now doing something wrong. And like in all other professions, the individual must be dealt with.
Now, we're asking our viewers whether or not they support the regulation as proposed by you. Do you think that that will curb all the problems that we've seen within the religious sector?
If everything we're proposing is implemented, Parliament capacitates us to do this through legislation, through financing, we are completely sure it will stop abruptly. And all the bad elements will be removed by their peers from the system. If you like the grass, go be a gardener. If you like snakes, go work in a snake park. And they'll all be deployed to relevant careers, and life will move on. And those that are in the business of pushing the gospel forward will continue with the work like it was happening before.
Ma'am, I thank you for your time, and really, that was said in a nutshell. Thank you so much for that report. I think it's going to save us a lot, and that's why we're asking you that question. Do you support the work of the CRL and, of course, the proposition that's on the table right now that all churches must be regulated? I would like to get your thoughts on that. We'll read some of your comments in a short while around that question. So, if you believe that you are a snake handler, leave religion. There we go. We'll take a break and we'll be right back after that.
Today on Rights and Recourse, we will unpack the new traditional court bill.
The idea of the bill is not to over-regulate, to basically set the principles.
The most important aspect of this bill is that it understands that customary law by its nature is consensual, that I have a right to affiliate, I have a right therefore to opt in, and I have a right to opt out.
The opt-out provision is basically one that you've got to respect the court in the sense of if you've been summoned, you've got to tell the clerk of the court at least that you're not willing to attend.
The challenge that I would like to throw to the Department of Justice, it has to come up with mechanisms of ensuring that people who exercise their right to opt out or to opt in are not in any way victimized.
Hashtag Rights with Dumila Mates on legal issues every Sunday at 2 o'clock Central African Time.
Legendary musician Ray Phiri will be granted a special provincial funeral. Now, this is in honor of his contribution to the music industry. Phiri passed away yesterday after battling lung cancer. Tributes continue to pour in for the veteran musician who was the frontman for the group Stimela. Arts and Culture Minister Nathi Mthethwa says Phiri contributed immensely to the country through his music during the struggle against apartheid. Now, as you heard there, the Mpumalanga provincial government is at Ray Phiri's house, and our reporter, Sibongile Mpolweni, is also there, and she joins us for an update. Before you get to your guests there, please first tell us, what is the situation like there, and what is the mood like at Ray Phiri's house?
Good morning, Elvis. The situation is as can expected, a somber mood. The family is here. We saw them yesterday. They're looking a little bit better than they were yesterday. Yesterday they were shocked and the daughters were crying all the time, but now they look stronger. They are communicating and talking and walking around. The news have since sank in that their father has passed away, and a bit of acceptance from them, as we're not seeing tears as yesterday. We saw, especially with the sons as well, when we spoke to them yesterday, speaking very fondly about their father and the love and values that he bestowed upon them, and telling us stories about him and how he was a good cook and how he encouraged them to cook and to eat healthy and go to the gym and all those things. Today the mood is somber, but we see that they are feeling stronger than they were yesterday. We have the acting premier of the province, Mtsweni. She's visiting with a delegation from the province, other MSCs behind me. She's going to tell us they met with the family this morning. She's going to just tell us that there might be some changes into the funeral arrangement as well as the dates of the memorial service that was set for this Saturday. Siyakubulisa kunjani namhlanje kuseni changes. I understand there are changes within the dates and the memorial service and the funeral. What have you spoken about with the family?
Sikubingelele sisibongile sibingelele nabalaleli emakhaya sithanda ukusho singuhulumene waseMpumalanga ukuthi we convey our deep condolences to the family. As you can see today, we are visiting the family for the very first time officially to come and convey the decision that we have taken as government, that as you well know that Mr. Ray Phiri was a legendary musician who comes from Mpumalanga. Not only just coming from Mpumalanga, but he's been very instrumental insofar as the young artist development is concerned on our behalf as Mpumalanga. You know that he used to be our representatives at the National Arts Council, and again he's a chairperson of the Arts Council in the province. As a result of that, we saw it fit as government of Mpumalanga that we accord him the funeral that he deserves, given the stature of a man that we are talking about today. Hence, we are here to meet with the family, and we must indicate that already the family tentatively they have communicated the dates for the funeral, but they are of course flexible, given the fact that the official meeting will ensue shortly, immediately after this interview, where we will be deliberating extensively as to what is it that we need to do moving forward, working together with them, and of course with the musicians that he used to, musician industry that he used to work in.
Okay, if I understand you correctly, Acting Premier, the date might change, but you have not, with the family, concluded and set a new date.
Definitely the dates might change, and the family is quite receptive to that and very flexible. That is the indication that is pleasing to us, that we got that response from them, and from now we will be having a meeting where we then deliberate in details as to how are we going to work moving forward.
Just briefly, what is a provincial special funeral? What does it entail?
The provincial special funeral will then mean, what would it mean is that we would be actively be involved as government in terms of logistic preparations for the funeral. As I've indicated, of course, we will be guided by the family, as we know that as Black people, we've got different rituals that we need to take into consideration as we prepare for this funeral. Basically, in terms of the funeral arrangements and the payments of whatever that is needed to make sure that we conclude this work will be taken care of by government. That's basically what it entails.
Thank you. That was Refilwe Mtsweni. She's the acting premier of Mpumalanga in the absence of Premier Didi Mabuza, who's out of the country. She's detailing what will happen next week in terms of the special provincial funeral. That means government takes care of all the arrangements, including finances thereof, but they respect and include the family in terms of conducting rituals and religion purposes that are within the family. So once they've completed the meeting, we will come back to you and we will let you know of the exact date of the memorial service as well as the exact date of the funeral. Previously, we had reported that the funeral will be on Tuesday and the memorial service will be this Saturday, but that might change. It's likely to change. Government is asking the family to shift a bit, and family is saying that they are flexible. They will talk to them, and that those days will change or might change, Elvis.
Thank you, Sibongile Mkani Mpolweni there in Mpumalanga at Ray Phiri's house for that report. She'll give us an update a little bit later. Meanwhile, Power FM sports journalist Tabiso Musia has accused Mzwaki Mbuli, the people's poet, of being a funeral scam artist. Musia recalled scam allegations made against Mbuli in 2016 after the passing of Mendoza. He's also warned that double dealing may be overlooked by Phiri's loved ones because he's a close family friend. Mzwaki Mbuli has refuted these claims.
To play because I'm not part of the family. I'm part of the music fraternity. I'm ordinary a mourner, like anybody else as people are paying tribute to Ray Phiri. I think I need to give a background. 2 weeks back, Maralo called saying that Ray Phiri's condition was terrible. I was alerted by that fact. And only yesterday, one was bombarded with all these calls. So much as one was receiving lots of calls for interviews, I made sure that I contacted Mutsei Komani, the former manager of Stimela. I spoke to Tapelo Homo, the keyboard player. I spoke also to Jabu Shibu, the bass player. And even when I came to SABC yesterday, I even said a condition that I would love to do these interviews knowing that members of Stimela have been approached or contacted. Then later in the day or in the morning, we got a call, 2 different offers. One came from Maralo Bataung that want to assist the family, and the Buddhist funeral parlor that did Guguzulu Joma Fellow's funeral. They said at no cost they wanted to make sure that they offer their services to give Ray Phiri a decent funeral. But as I was watching the news, even family members saying that the government in Mpumalanga would like to do a provincial state funeral, which is fine. That's where I can say. But there's nothing, there's no role that I'm playing except me remembering that, by the way, we soldiered on with Ray Phiri.
Now, you are seen as a close family friend, but Power FM sports journalist Tabiso Musia has accused you of being a funeral scam artist and has advised the Phiri family to avoid at all costs allowing you to be part of the funeral arrangements. How do you view these accusations?
They are malicious. I think unless we are dealing with attention seekers here, they are malicious. How do you define me like that? Because a funeral is not planned, death is never planned. No one knew about Ray Phiri that was going to leave us so soon. And again, I'm not part of the family. And then again, to label me that, I think it's not for me to entertain people who want to divert attention. Currently, in terms of African tradition, the nation is mourning. We should focus on that, not something else that will actually move the focus from the main event and the main happenings as we speak. So the people, when there is a death, they observe that period. So who am I to? I've just heard another, sometimes you as matured people, if people insult you with something that you are not, you don't have to worry because you are not what it is alleged that you are. So how can you label me a con artist or whatever? So I don't have to entertain that. Now, because again, Yeah, I don't have to. I had to find out who is this yeah.
Now, I want to continue with what he says. He says, that's Musia now, the sports journalist from Power FM. He says that he witnessed an incident in which you demanded 70,000 Rand during Mendoza's funeral arrangements to organize a sound system, when in fact, Arthur Mofokati had already offered a sound system for free. Is this true?
It is not true. You know, the church itself, Grace, has got its own sound system. If, for example, what you are saying on air, that 70 was paid, then there would be an invoice and somebody would say, I made them to pay that. Instead, that was not paid because these churches are built in with their own sound system. And I need also to say that. I think if the arts and culture housing that actually secured the venue, which is a Grace Bible Church. So the allegation was like, it's me. So if anybody has got information, for example, I never paid under apartheid to this day for a funeral I don't charge. So when I'm being made a program director, it's worse because more job than just reciting a poem. I don't charge. I did not charge. So the program was run, even was faxed to me, in fact, emailed to me by Arts and Culture official called Bongile Besani. So whatever happened, I cannot go and impose to any family, whether Lundi or Mendoza or Ray Phiri, and tell them what to do, how to write the obituary and the program. It never happens. I can never impose myself that. So instead, I was approached, in the case of Mendoza, is both the family of the wife and the family of Mendoza that requested me, even despite the fact that it was in the media, that it happened a week before I was supposed to go for a voice op. But I had to do it knowing that I had strains. I did something against the doctor. But be that it is me, the allegations are malicious and false. I don't think we should entertain that. Currently, we should focus on the death of either Brajoli Meko, either Ray Phiri, or Peter Mbuli, people who have to be buried on Saturday, and other one coming week. But look, sir, I am not prepared really to entertain this. Because if this is the issue, the Mendoza families have written to me letters of a vote of thanks from the wife to the senior Shabalala families, thanking me of how I handled the funeral itself. So look, I can't now, the following year later, how many months now, somebody will come and say, some other people must avoid me. Avoid me in what? Because I think I can even safely say to you that, when Lundi died, there was this thing that I hope Mbuli would make sure that even Lundi himself gets similar or big publicity like Mendoza, which we pumped and did our best, and exactly that happened. Currently, there are people who were saying, please give us a break. We don't want a similar music type on the airwaves, vis-a-vis overseas music. Suddenly, I don't see those people coming forward saying, now instead they are celebrating Ray Phiri. Yet, this very same year, we were being accused that want people to listen to South African music vis-a-vis overseas music.
Now, Ray Phiri wrote that song and he performed it very well, Whispers in the Dark. And unfortunately, social media as well as Twitter does not whisper in the dark. It's very loud and clear. And then the question would be then to you, Mr. Mbuli, shouldn't you then avoid playing this organizational role when it comes to funeral preparations of artists and that you just should be a mourner?
Yeah, there is no role that I've played. It's on record. I only appeared on Mendoza's funeral. I was requested by both the family. I remember even the father of the Mendoza's wife emphasizing me, saying there is Kid Mabuto. I gave them names on the table that there are people who are capable of becoming program directors because I have a voice problem. I was supposed to go on a voice operation, but they emphasized that I should play the role. So I stayed away from Lundi. I stayed away from Sifiso. I've stayed away from Tandi Tlasin's funeral. I was in the background. So that is the role I would play.
We live with this threat of violence. This is a strange and weird thing, if you come to think of it. So we don't live in a society, which is where the question is. We want to live in a society where we trust that we will not be violated.
A man abducted her from a taxi rank in Baragwanath.
He would have taken me and killed me. He would have shot me while I was running, you know. But none of those things happened. And, you know, even if I didn't believe in God, like, this is a real miracle.
How does the police unit of family violence follow new crime trends?
Station crime intelligence will from time to time present the crime pattern analysis and the crime threat analysis. We respond to those.
For all investigative insights, stay tuned to Special Assignment every Saturday at 17:30.
Welcome back. My name is Kendo Makhamate, and it's of course our time for the sports. We start off with a great story about how South Africa's women's cricket team has edged a little closer to winning the ICC Women's World Cup in England and Wales. They've recorded their 4th win in 6 matches with an 8-wicket victory over Sri Lanka at their county ground in Taunton to walk into the semi-finals.
South Africa, with one of the finest bowling attacks in the tournament, couldn't believe their luck when Sri Lanka won the toss and decided to bat first. They were put under immediate pressure with Marizan Cup and Shanib Ismail restricting them to 5 for the loss of 2 wickets in the 5th over. Ismail took 3 for 14 in 7 overs and 3 deliveries, but it was a captain Dane van Niekerk who again outshone the others with the ball. The blonde leg spinner took 4 for 24 in 8 overs, her 3rd 4-wicket haul in the tournament. Sri Lanka were eventually bowled out for 101 in the 41st over. If the Proteas have a weakness, it's their batting, and they lost the informed Nizal Lee for a duck and Trisha Chetty for 13. But 19-year-old Laura van Walt and Manuel Dupré steered the team home, scoring the winning runs in the 24th over. 4 of our top scored with 48 from 66 deliveries, while Dupré's contribution in the unbeaten 78-run 3rd wicket partnership was 38. South Africa next play Australia at the same venue on Saturday. Tandam Mbuli, SABC News.
Right now, South Africa's newly discovered generation of world-class sprinters will not be the last, as is clearly evident in Nairobi at the IAAF World Youth Championships. Tinara Limau and Ritsisi Mlenga sprinted to gold and silver in the final of the men's under 1800 meters to take gold and silver. The two had earlier dominated the qualifiers with a set personal best and leading times in the heats and semi-finals.
6th fastest in the world this year. Very impressive in morning and afternoon sessions. The South African, Malenga. The 2nd South African in the field, Chinolo Lomau. And this time,
brushing aside the rainy and wet conditions, the young South African sprint duo scooped the nation's first ever medals in a World Championship event over the short sprint distance, with Limau clocking 10.57 seconds, holding off Mlenga by just 0.04 seconds. Jamaican speedster Tariq Wilson settled for bronze in 10.65. Though he'd entered the race as a favourite after clocking the fastest time in the semi-finals, second-placed Mlenga was delighted to step on the podium. Both Limau and Mlenga are scheduled to run the heats of the 200 metres on Friday.
Well, he was cool at the start and he's cool at the finish, but he is letting the emotion show now. As you say,
Right, now in a day of upsets on the tennis courts of the All England club, 2 big scalps left Wimbledon 2017 as first Britain's Andy Murray exited the tournament, followed by Novak Djokovic. Switzerland's Roger Federer booked his place in the Wimbledon semi-finals after beating Canadian Milos Raonic. Federer barely struggled in the opening 2 sets as he claimed them without breaking a sweat. Just like last year's titanic clash between these two, Raonic staged a mini comeback in the 3rd set and took it to a tie-break. But the 6-time Wimbledon champion Federer would not be denied his chance at a berth in the semi-finals. He attacked Raonic's weak backhand to claim the set 7-6 and win the match 6-4, 6-4, 7-6. He will be facing Thomas Berdych in the semi-finals on Friday after Novak Djokovic retired hurt in a quarter-final. Now, Djokovic struggled with his right arm in the 2nd set and ended up calling for a medical timeout. When that did not help, he did give up his place and conceded the match.
Is this it? I think he's defaulting.
Ladies and gentlemen, due to injury.
Now, quick-step rider Marcel Kittel won the 203.5-kilometre stage 11 of the Tour de France. The German outsprinted Dylan Groenewegen of Lotto NL Jumbo and Dimension Darters Edvald Bosenhagen for his 5th stage victory. Marco Marcato of the UAE team Emirates was the first man out of the bunch right after the flag off. The 2 more riders joined him, but the peloton always had the gap under control. After the jostling for positions in the final sprint, Kittel was just too strong for the competition. Chris Froome maintained his 18-second lead at the top of the general classification. And the Southern Kings' last rugby match against the Free State Cheetahs in the Super Rugby competition on Friday will be an emotional encounter for the boys from the Bay. Both franchises have been excluded from the Super Rugby competition next year. It has been a bitter pill for the Kings to swallow as they've gone from strength to strength in the competition of late.
An emotional training session for the Southern Kings. An exodus of players is expected after Friday's match. This will leave head coach Dion Davis with a headache as he tries to assemble a squad before September for the European Pro 12 competition. The Kings have applauded their fans for their loyalty and they want to exit the competition with their heads held high.
It's been a great season. I think the guys have bought into our culture, the guys have bought into everything we wanted to do, the guys have enjoyed themselves, the guys have bought into our goals, and we've accomplished a lot of our goals that we've set for ourselves. One of our final goals was to see Nelson Mandela Bay full of people and full of support. So hopefully we can, as a team, we've managed to change that perspective and get thousands of people out here to support us.
Whatever's happening out there is happening, but here's another opportunity opening, the UK League. So yeah, we're not taking it too hard. We're just focusing on the next game, the next training, and we're just taking each day as it comes.
Southern Kings have been the shining example of transformation this season, with players such as Makazole Mapimpi and Andy Sanzila have been selected for the South Africa A team. It's said to be a bruising battle on Friday, with one change to the team that beat the Bulls last weekend. Wilhelm van der Slees starts at lock in place of Erne Herbst.
The Cheetahs, they've played some very, very good rugby this season. They also like to play with ball in hand and use the width of the field. They've got a good scrum and they've got a good maul. They've got some good strong runners in the midfield and then some exciting outside backs. So I don't think they will deviate much in terms of their game plan, but I think it's going to be a game of high intensity.
The 45,000-seater stadium is expected to be full with both teams looking to prove a point. Zolani Moya, SABC News, Port Elizabeth.
Let's just hope that's not the death of rugby in the Eastern Cape. As you all know, it is a hotbed of African rugby on this continent, is the Eastern Cape. That's why we leave it for now. Time for the weather with Tsietse Monar.
Hello there, it is time indeed to take a look at what is cooking in terms of the weather. We've been hearing a lot about the Larsen Sea or the breakage in the Antarctica regions, but not to worry about that. It should not have much of an impact in your everyday life or your everyday weather. Right now, we're expecting a bit of rainfall along the coastal parts of South Africa, especially for the Eastern Cape Coast, as well as over KwaZulu-Natal, and possibilities of clouds moving up north towards Zambia, definitely towards DRC, and a bit of rainfall also coming in tomorrow towards the Eastern Cape province. And what's also coming by Saturday and Sunday is possibility of snowfalls just along Lesotho highlands there, and the cold front will be coming your way on Saturday from the southwestern part as usual and bringing cooler conditions towards the Western Cape province. This is the temperature situation for this afternoon: 23 for Upington, 24 for Pretoria. A bit of a chilly day towards Sutherland here. Please do make sure you have your coats ready. It's going to be quite cold for the southern part of Northern Cape province, as well as the interior of the Western Cape and the Eastern Cape. So be prepared, and for the weekend coming up as well, it's going to remain quite chilly. 24 for Bulawayo with possibilities of clouds coming up towards Maputo at a maximum of 23 degrees. A very cold day for Luderitz, only reaching a maximum of 17. All those in Madagascar, well, things are looking pretty cool for you there. Antananarivo is at 18 degrees. The good news is it's going to be sunny like most parts of South Africa. But then again, some clouds are coming your way there in the interior of Zambia as well as over the DRC. And all those are going to be in Lusaka. Temperatures for you at 22 degrees. Kampala is at 26, 31 for Juba, and Banjul at 32 degrees. A bit of rainy weather now situated towards that northeastern interior and also along the west coast. Definitely you should expect rainfall for you there. And then some partly cloudy skies are expected towards Chad, Sudan, and for all those are going to be in Eritrea. Morocco might see some clouds as well, but it's just going to be quite hot and possibilities of dry weather along those parts. Tripoli at about 35, 37 for Agadez, and the hottest one being Mecca at 43 degrees. And finally, just to wrap it up, West Africa, lots and lots of rainfall coming up along the interior there. So make sure you've got your umbrella or get your raincoat on if you're going to be on one of those Amatatu there. That's it for now. Stay tuned. There should hopefully be more weather later.
After a horrific accident, major questions were asked.
So step one, I asked myself, do I really want to die? And my answer to that was, I'm not sure. And then step two was, do I want my parents to bury me? And the answer to that was no.
Learning kept his brain in full action on how the brain works.
When I was in hospital, right, as I was saying, to catch up with my peers, I started to become obsessed with memory techniques and how the brain works and how we retain information.
Touching lives is his continuous mission.
I now work for a non-profit where we deal with access issues regarding kids with disabilities and persons with disability. We're busy working on beach access.
Being wheelchair-bound did not stop fun in his life.
I party in a wheelchair, I laugh in a wheelchair, I smile in a wheelchair.
For all your uplifting stories, catch Bupilong every Friday.
Kilimanjaro, majestic and mysterious. 27 climbers. 5,895 meters, 5 days, trekking in honor of Madiba and for underprivileged schoolgirls. In just 5 years, millions of sanitary towels have been distributed countrywide. The target to reach 2 million needy girl children by 2020.
It's time that as men, we must actually pick one sanitary pack.
We can touch one girl through this initiative.
SABC News will again be documenting the arduous expedition. The climbers have one goal in mind. To pledge support for a month's supply of sanitary pads, SMS Gillian or Tabo M to 42513. The South African team hopes to summit Uhuru, Africa's highest peak, on Madiba's birthday, July 18th.
Meningitis is a potentially deadly disease that affects more than 1 million people worldwide each year.
Well, it's an infection of the lining of the brain and the spinal cord. And it's caused by a variety of bacteria.
And also, importantly, with fungal meningitis, there's no transmission from person to person.
In South Africa and elsewhere in the world, the ministries of health etc. have recognized this as an important disease to prevent. And vaccines have been introduced into immunization, routine immunization programs.
It's really important to prevent, and the best way to prevent is to have people know their HIV status, start antiretroviral treatment as soon as possible.
For all your health news, join Health Talk every Saturday from 9 to 10.
We live with this threat of violence. This is a strange and weird thing, if you come to think of it. So we don't live in a society, which is where the question is. We want to live in a society where we trust that we will not be violated.
A man abducted her from a taxi rank in Baragwane.
He would have taken me and killed me. He would have shot me while I was running, you know. But none of those things happened. And, you know, even if I didn't believe in God, like, this is a real miracle.
How does the police unit of family violence follow new crime trends?
Station crime intelligence will from time to time present the crime pattern analysis and the crime threat analysis. We respond to those.
For all investigative insights, stay tuned to Special Assignment every Saturday at 17:30. A meteorite hit the Earth 2 million years ago, creating an enormous impact of crater, about 10 kilometers in diameter, near Vredefort in the Free State, 100 kilometers southwest of Johannesburg, now known as the Vredefort Dome, a South African World Heritage Site. The meteorite is said to have been larger than Table Mountain and caused a 1,000 megaton blast of energy. The impact would have heated about 70 cubic kilometers of rock and have increased the Earth's oxygen levels to a degree that made the development of multicellular life possible. The world has about 130 crater structures of possible impact origin. The Vredefort Dome is the largest in the world, followed by Sudbury Crater in Canada and the Chicxulub Crater in Mexico.
Yes, it's Thursday the 13th of July. It's the final hour here in the newsroom. Jumbo Africa. I'm Elvis Preslin.
Buana, I'm Kendall Makamati.
We'll be with you until 12 o'clock. Now today, the focus on the death penalty at the recent ANC policy conference. Some members of the Women's League push for the restoration of the death penalty, Kendall.
Absolutely. It's become a hot topic, and it's finally time that we'll bring it to you. Our viewers want to find out from you, what do you think? Should the death penalty be reinstated in South Africa?
We'll have a debate on that issue in a short while, but let's take a look at what you are telling us meanwhile. In fact, that's the poll there. Before we get to your comments, 68%.
351 votes.
351, yeah? 68% are saying yes, the death penalty should be reinstated in South Africa. Only 32% are saying no.
Yeah.
Great. So let's see what you are telling us on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on the Facebook page.
Wayne Preston Gopal says yes, definitely must bring it back. Criminals have it too easy in this country.
This one from Bayanda says, if a person is convicted of murder, then why not give them what they love? Take them away also. Well, an eye for an eye, says Bayanda.
Tabo Kesa says, what's wrong with eliminating convicted killers? Things are getting out of hand because we want to be too goody-goody.
This one from Tabo is, in fact, it's the same one. So keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue during the course of the program. But we're also focusing on the CRL Rights Commission that has released the final report on the regulation and the commercialization of these churches, Kendall. And we had the chairperson in a little bit early. She was scathing. Yep. She says, if you want to become a gardener and you love gardening and you want to eat grass, become a gardener. Leave the religion alone.
Yeah, now very, very interesting topic that we're covering today because, yes, it affects all of us, does it not? We want to find out from you, do you support the regulation of all churches in South Africa?
That's the question. Let's take a look at what you are telling us. This one from Butibar and Kosi says, with all my being, some of these charismatic churches pastors are not called, but they are here for their own gain. Let the regulation be passed.
LM Shongwe says, yes, I support it. These people are getting rich through people's money. Last money.
Martin says, I prefer the peer review mechanism, but all churches should be registered. That's a good one there from Martin there. So let them be registered so you can go and check on the local website, of course, of the CRL, whether these churches are registered, whether your pastor is registered. And I think that's why a lot of these charismatic churches want to avoid.
Yeah, it seems like that's a nub of the matter there. But surely you cannot regulate ignorance. You cannot regulate how one thinks.
Well, we're also doing a sports question today on the women's cricket team that's doing absolute phenomenal work right now.
On to much more pleasant matters, right? The Proteas women making it to the semi-finals of the ICC Women's World Cup. They've played 6, they've won 4. Phenomenal stuff by the Protea women, and they're flying the flag high. We want to find out from you at home, what do you make of the Protea women's performance so far?
Well, let's see what's coming in. Ricardo Peterson says not
surprised, I think.
Not surprised, I think. Official essay, undermine women's sporting codes and our youth. Remember the under-19 cricketers won the World Cup who produced Kagiso Rabada. That's also correct.
But Ricardo, remember that Markram is now in the squad. Kagiso Rabada is like our lead bowler. Tennis to Brain has sort of been in there and thereabouts. So yeah, I don't think they're letting them go. Maybe in some other fields. Ati Ndombeni says, congrats, no cricket team in the world depends on 1 or 2 players. The team always plays to win.
Bekani says, I didn't know that they can play, so, well, honestly, I'm very impressed, says Bekani.
Yeah, Bekani, you and us, we're really impressed with how the ladies are going.
Yes, so keep them coming. We'll read them all. But right now, let's get down to business and take a look at your news headlines. Police officers have been deployed in a number of taxi ranks in Soweto following a decision to close them down by the Gauteng Department of Roads. The South African Communist Party leadership has requested the party's 14th Congress in Boksburg to endorse their calls for President Jacob Zuma to step down as the President of the Republic. And Communications Minister Yanda Dlotlo has received the Leadership and Humanitarian Award from the civil rights leader and social justice activist in the US, Reverend Jesse Jackson, there in Chicago. Now, those are all your headlines. But before we get there to the news, let's find out from Kendall what's happening on the sports front.
Elvis, thank you very much. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today. At the Women's Cricket World Cup, Captain Danefa Nikak and Shabnim Ismail in an 8-wicket rot at Sri Lanka as the Queen Proteas booked their place in the semi-finals.
In the air and out. And this time...
Chinuro Limau leads the South African 1-2 at the IAAF World Youth Championships, underlining the depth of sprinting talent in this country as a new generation starts to emerge.
South African 1-2 with Malenga coming in to take second, but Limau has struck gold in Nairobi. Match points.
Again, second match winner.
And he's through to his 12th semi-final here at Wimbledon.
6-2. Roger Federer has left as the last man standing of the Big Four as he books his place in the semi-finals with a straight sets walk in the park against Milos Raonic.
So many numbers by his name, but that is the most.
All this and other stories in more detail at 11:35. To stay with Elvis as he's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this morning. Metro Police as well as Gauteng traffic officials out in full force this morning to enforce the closure of several taxi ranks in parts of Soweto. The routes affected are operated by the Nansfield Dube West Taxi Association as well as the Witwatersrand African Association. Commuters have been urged to use alternative transport. The closure of the taxi rank follows ongoing clashes between the two associations over the routes. This has resulted in several deaths and many more injuries. The South African National Taxi Council, SANTACO, says although it does not condone the violence, closing the routes is not a solution. SANTACO plans to have an urgent meeting with the government to discuss the way forward. Meanwhile, 13 cases of murder and attempted murder are being investigated following the violent actions by the taxi associations. The South African Communist Party leadership has requested the party's 14th Congress in Boksburg to endorse calls for President Jacob Zuma to step down. This is in the wake of growing discontent over his leadership. The SACP also says its relations with the ANC are at an all-time low. This was revealed in the party's State of the Organization report, which was tabled at Congress. Meanwhile, Nzimande, the Secretary General, has retained the SACP's General Secretary post for a 5th term. He was re-elected last night. There was also minimal change to the rest of the Communist Party top leadership. Former Central Committee member Chris Mahlako takes over from Solly Mapaila as the second Deputy General Secretary of the party, and Mapaila has been promoted to the position of the first Deputy General Secretary, previously occupied by Jeremy Cronin. Cronin did not avail himself for another term. Senzeni Sokwana has been retained as the national chairperson, Tulas Nesi as his deputy, while Joyce Moloi Maropa remains the national treasurer. Mapaila's supporters had hoped that he would challenge Mbuli Nzimande for the general secretary position, but the popular SACP leader says there was no need for a contest of positions. Let's now check what is happening today at the SACP's Congress. Solly Mapaila is now on the podium. Let's go there live.
So when we are talking about new fronts, you also think about your existing front. Therefore, the approach in party building will require diversifying political education and ideological training methodology. So it's not a one-sided kind of a thing. Commissioner Maleka has been working on a series of interventions and so forth. We need to find a way in which we can have very easy way to train and diversify political education and ideological training of our members, and to introduce the basic areas of the do's and don'ts of party membership. There are certain areas that should be no-go areas for party members. Criminal activity, for instance. There should be no entertainment with criminals within the Communist Party. Firm action needs to be taken constantly, deliberately, all the time. So the do's and don'ts section, it's an important section that comrades must look into. The structural and institutional forms and requirements of party organization. What kind of institutions should we have? What kind of structures should we have? And therefore, this have implication for the constitution that we will finally deal with. Then we also look into international experiences. We're just giving you some examples of two parties. The Communist Party of China, we're just showing you, we're not saying follow it up. That party has got over 89 million members. And it's a massive society. 1.35 billion people. So we're not comparing ourselves necessarily to them. We're giving you an example of how one of the other parties in the world are organized. The Communist Party of China has got 205 members of the Central Committee. And they meet once a year. We meet 4 times a year. They meet once a year. When they meet, they discuss one topic. They don't discuss any other thing. In between the meeting, they commission research for the debate they're going to have in the next Central Committee meeting. We discuss many things. We overproduce ideas and lack the implementation of the many ideas that we produce. They have a discipline inspection of 130 members. And these members of the discipline inspection are elected by Congress. They have the same power or level of capacity as that of the Central Committee. They are not a substructure of the Central Committee. In our movement, for instance, the ANC has attempted this with the Integrity Commission, but as a substructure of the NEC. And they've got, the discipline inspection, for instance, has got 19 member, the Communist Party itself has got 19 member standing committee and secretariat that are full-time. Even the Communist Party has got its own full-time personnel. They've got the Military Commission with 8 members, chairperson and the deputy. The Military Commission, the difference here in China is that the army in China, largely, it's a party army. It's an army of the Communist Party, which serves the people of China. So it's integrated differently Commissar Mthembu Jackson. It's a different society altogether. Now, the General Secretary has got many deputies and supported by 7 full-time members who are drawn from the PB and the Standing Committee of the Communist Party of China. No, he has no deputies. He has got 7 Central Committee members. There's 1 General Secretary. He has got 7 Central Committee members who are supported as a secretariat from the Standing Committee. They are above the ministers. The ministers in the Republic account to this committee. Sometimes it's sometimes we feel that Comrade Jessley Tully House should have that effective oversight of the team in government consistently. That is strategic. They've got a Politburo of 25 members and 7 full-time members of that Politburo. This is China, 89 million members. Then the Socialist Republic of Cuba, Communist Party there, has more or less similar arrangements with China, except the following. Members of the Communist Party are not drawn generally from any section in society. They are drawn from assembly of workers. So members are drawn from amongst the workers through what you call workers' assemblies. And at the center of this, it's about conscious socialist construction, and they've embraced concept of solidarity and human service by workers. You must remember that these are communist societies. The factories in Cuba do not necessarily belong to some capitalist somewhere else. They belong to the workers and to the people represented by government as a whole. So the workplace is restructured differently. That is why even trade unions in Cuba are different as trade unions in capitalist societies. Workers plan the workplace and allocation of duties and fulfillment of targets. So in that case, the workers that are showing more commitment, showing more respect, showing more solidarity with other workers, showing more humane values, are elevated and selected for consideration to be members of the Communist Party. So a party member becomes something else. It becomes a prestigious thing in that society to become a member of the Communist Party. You know, Mapaila, my late friend Mulanto Mulaba, he says, Slovo, he says his greatest regret, or not his greatest, his worst regret in the movement is that he was never ever considered for recruitment into MK, because he believes that somehow comrades saw a socialite lifestyle on him and they never recruited him. So he felt this was the only thing he missed in our revolution. But what he was trying to explain is the same value that the Cuban people feel. If you are always not being nominated to be considered for membership of the Communist Party, because it's so prestigious, it's based on your values, so you are always seeking to be a better human being, to change yourself, and in that way to be considered that you can serve society better. Doesn't mean that all others can serve society. But once you join the ranks of the Communist Party,
That was the first Deputy General Secretary. That's his new position, Solly Mapaila, speaking at the SACP's Congress currently underway. Now, here's another important announcement. The Finance Minister, Gigaba, will announce an action plan shortly, which is aimed at reviving our ailing economy. The plan has set goals and timelines for all stakeholders to address the country's recession and create jobs. Let's find out more from Devon Murigan. He's at the JSC. A very good morning to you, Devon. What can we expect there today?
Well, thanks very much indeed, Alva. So what is today about? Well, the Finance Minister, Gigaba, expected in a few moments' time to announce this much-anticipated action plan on reviving the economy. Now, you'll recall last week when he was with the Commissioner of SARS, Tom Boyane, announcing their tax target, he said that they have got together with business and other stakeholders in the economy to put together an action plan which would involve roles of different government departments and businesses and set timelines. A crucial development because, as you know, the economy is in a recession. We've got an unemployment rate of close to 28%. Jobs are bleeding according to many analysts. So something has to be done to revive not only the economy but confidence in investment. So in a few hours' time, or rather a few minutes' time, the Finance Minister will give us more clarity on that action plan. But I thought while he's here, Chris Gilmore, Chairman of the Investment Analysts Society of South Africa, can give us a brief idea on what to expect. This is crucial from an investor point of view, but also from a South African point of view, is it not, Chris?
Devin, no, you're right. Charles Dickens wrote a book called Great Expectations, and that's what we're all looking for. We have great expectations today, and hopefully we're not going to experience a damp squib. Now, given the fact that what we've heard so far is that the Minister is looking to elicit the assistance of the private sector in a variety of forms, augurs well. You know, there's an awful lot of money out there in the private sector, and if mobilised efficiently, it could be one of the ways out of it. Could be one of the ways to kickstart this economy, because goodness knows we need to kickstart it. But, you know, the private sector has to have faith that the money is going to be spent wisely and isn't going to be frittered away. At the end of the Second World War, you had government, you had the private sector, and you had unions working together incredibly successfully. And West Germany, as it was in those days, really prospered tremendously. So there's a classic example of where, with the right will, and pulling all of the right constituents together, can do well.
What has to be in this plan this morning? Because, I mean, last week the Minister said you will get an outline of what different government departments should be doing. You'll also get timelines set to that, which is extremely important. What shouldn't be missing from this plan?
Number of things. We need to get a commitment to reducing state expenditure, not just capping it, but actually physically reducing it, and sending the message out there that there's no longer any kind of tolerance for waste anywhere in the system. Secondly, as I said before, you've got to be able to persuade the private sector that there's an appetite. Well, we know there's an appetite, but there's a willingness to get on with the job. And I think if he demonstrates that he is going to be putting all of those parts of the equation into place and is going to be monitoring it very, very closely, then I think he'll get the buy-in from the private sector.
And it's so important, isn't it? Because from that March cabinet reshuffle, which was rather abrupt, you had business posturing the stance, and as much as we want them to do otherwise, the trust deficit is still there. We're looking for more and more things for the Finance Minister to assure investors that, hey, stability is on course in the short term and in the long term. So he has to convey that today.
No, you're right. And I think what you're really saying there, Devin, is confidence. After that disastrous cabinet reshuffle, we saw confidence, whether it's consumer confidence, whether it's business confidence, falling off a cliff. We are now looking at an economy that is, unfortunately, we've got the psyche, this dreadfully negative psyche in place, and getting rid of that, I think, is part and parcel of what needs to be done here today. This could perhaps be a catalyst for changing that psychological downturn that we're currently in.
Okay. Chris Gilmore, thanks very much indeed. So that's where we leave it for now. In a few moments' time, Finance Minister Mbuli Gigaba will be announcing this much-anticipated action plan. From the JSE, bye for now.
That was our reporter, Devin Morrigan, coming to us, and he'll probably update us a little bit later in one of our other programs. So you have to stay tuned. You don't want to miss that. We'll take a break, and we'll be right back. After that, you don't want to miss it. We have a debate on the death penalty. Stay tuned.
The Pan-African Parliament, as a legislative body, could go a long way in continuing to promote women's rights in all African member states.
Moon will be elected president. A decisive win by him will provide much-needed stability in South Korea.
The Deputy President and the SADC Oversight Committee have been mandated to convene a multi-stakeholder national dialogue before elections.
5 teams are trapped in the relegation mud. These include Bloemfontein Celtic, 12th on the log, followed by Chippa United, Free State Stars and Baroka, who are second from the bottom, as well as Highlands Park, who have won only 4 matches.
We're on point with breaking stories, detailed economy and sport. Tune into Midday Report every Monday to Friday from 12 p.m.
Welcome back. The rate of violent crime in South Africa has been in the spotlight in recent months. This as ordinary South Africans continue to be the victims of violent deaths. Contact crime, which includes murder, attempted murder, rape, car hijackings, house break-ins, are just some of the crimes that tend to characterize the public perception about crime in South Africa. Now, this in turn shapes public response and perception and explains the public outcry over the recent highly publicized rapes and murders featured in the media, with the call, starting off with the Women's League, the ANC, for the death penalty to be reinstated. Now, to discuss this further, whether or not the death penalty should be brought back, we are joined in studio by the chairperson of the South African Human Rights Commission, Advocate Bongani Majola, as well as Lorraine Claassen, a criminologist and a researcher at AfriForum Research Institute. A very good morning to both of you.
Very good morning to you too.
First and foremost, before I ask you the question, we ask first a question to our viewers this morning, and we ask them whether or not the death penalty should be brought back. Let's take a look at that poll and what it is suggesting at this point in time in terms of the numbers. Let's take a look. There it is. Should the death penalty be reinstated in South Africa? So far, there's 371 votes in. 69% of South Africans, as well as people on the African continent, are suggesting that the death penalty should be reinstated in South Africa. 31% are saying not. Now, when you look at that, and let's take a look if there's any comments coming through the poll on that question. Well, we'll take a look at some of the comments during the course of our discussion, but from both of you, I would like to get your thoughts on this and whether or not capital punishment should be brought back. Let's start off with you, Lorraine.
Well, I think that before a discussion or a debate about capital punishment can be productively used and utilized in South Africa between all the parties involved, I think we first have to look at the criminal justice system and the efficiency thereof and the conviction rate of the prisoners that's or the people sentenced for contact crimes or violent crimes. When we look at those figures, it seems that the conviction rate is very low. And with regards to capital punishment as deterrence, research does show that even if it was life imprisonment versus capital punishment, the deterrence doesn't seem conclusive to the effect that a death penalty would have.
So it's neither here nor there.
That's right.
Advocate, your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts is that we shouldn't bring back the death penalty ever. Because, and I agree with her that the conviction rate, the detection rate is very low. But we are a constitutional democracy and we have chosen to adopt a particular constitutional dispensation which values the right to life. And our constitutional court has actually said that the right to life and the right to dignity are two most important rights in our democracy. And so we should not go against those values. I think we should value life. But beside that, I think that, as she has already said, that the death penalty is not going to be a solution, because unless there is certainty of detection, certainty of good prosecution and successful conviction, your death penalty will sit on the shelf and gather dust. You know, it's pointless.
Now, Ms. Claassen, your members at AfriForum has at times called for the reintroduction or the restoration of the death penalty. But is that enough justification, especially when it relates to farm killings? Is that enough justification to bring back the death penalty?
With relation to farm killings?
Yes.
Well, I think when we look at farm killings, especially in the crimes committed during farm attacks, I'm definitely not denying the brutality and the gruesomeness of the violence used during the attacks. That is something that is very worrisome for us, and we are quite outspoken about the level of violence used during farm attacks. But the same applies. I would really like to know what the conviction rate of people who committed crimes during farm attacks at the end of the day really is, and is that an effective deterrence, as I said already, and what I would like to hear from the inmates themselves, the prisoners who were convicted of crimes committed during farm attacks, what was their intentions, and would the death penalty have been a deterrence for them if it was in place?
But what is the sense that you get from your members within AfriForum? Do they want the death penalty back or not?
Well, I assume a lot of our members would want the death penalty back. You can only look at the media reports and the comments at the bottom of the reports, where the people are very angry about the frequency of the attacks, and again the level of violence and overkill used during the attacks. That being said, still, I think that the big onus or the big focus should be on the criminal justice system and the effectiveness of apprehending the suspects in the first place. The whole police proceedings, forensic investigations, as well as the length that these investigations usually take. It can take months or years for people to get convicted.
Advocate, from your perspective, farm killings, is that enough justification to call for the reinstatement of the death penalty?
Well, farm killings are very bad, but they are not worse than any other killing. A killing of a child, a killing of a woman, a killing of anybody is very bad. And so I wouldn't say the one is better than any other. But I understand, coming from the Human Rights Commission, we understand the anger and the hunger for retribution. We at the Commission actually are very disturbed by the increase in the killing of women, the rapes of children, and so on. But we do not think that our hunger for retribution should outweigh the value of life, which is entrenched in our Constitution. We rather think that we should work on our policing. We should, as the community, we should support the police rather than expect them to do their work without us coming forward to say, this is what I saw, this is what happened, here is the criminal. We should also help support our politicians, to the Department of Justice, to train the prosecutors, so that when cases are well investigated and they are presented to the prosecutors, they are able to present them successfully before the judges. And this country has got the death penalty, not the death penalty, I'm sorry, the life sentence.
Yes.
And if people who do wrong know that there is certainty of detection, successful prosecution, and punishment, this is going to have a more positive impact in relate to crime rates. There's one other thing that I'd like to add, that there are countries that have the death penalty, and it has not brought down the crime. The US, they have the death penalty. They still kill people up to this day. It hasn't changed anything. You know, in the Scandinavia, on the other hand, the death penalty is not there, but crime is not high. There is also a gamble, if I may add, that with the death penalty, you may kill the wrong person.
Some of our viewers has highlighted that. But what do you make of, especially countries in the Middle East, where a crime committed is being punished by an offense? For instance, if you commit an offense like stealing a handbag or something, they cut off your hand. And, of course, there's capital punishment if you kill somebody.
Well,
and the crime rates are low.
Well, with respect, I haven't done research as to how crime statistics are in the Middle East, but it's too brutal. You know, in a civilized democratic society, I do not think that we should then do it because maybe in some country in the Middle East, people get drawn and quartered, and because of the fear that people have, they obey the law. I think we we should have other forms of persuading people to be law-abiding citizens.
Now, Ms. Glasen, it's also believed that capital punishment, if it's brought back, it will be a punishment for black people all over again, because black people in this country is the majority, and that will be almost like retrospective injustice on our country. Your thoughts?
Well, I think with regards to crime and punishment and the criminal justice system, when it comes to crime in general and especially violent crime, I think that the actions that the perpetrators took should be taken in account irrespective of their color. So if a murderer of women and children committed these crimes and is found guilty, the onus was with him to make the decision to commit the crime, irrespective of the race of the perpetrator.
I'll just get to a last thought on this, because we're going to cross back to the JSE where the Finance Minister is about to speak. But what do you think, perhaps, Advocate, would be the solution to this? We know now, and you've indicated that the conviction rate is very low. So what do we do?
What do we do is we have a better functioning crime investigation system. We train the investigators. We support them by giving them evidence when a crime has been committed. We don't say, no, I don't know, it's not my child. If it's my child, I should say, yes, it was my child. And I give the evidence and not try to hide the evidence. We need people coming forward, if they've seen anything, to come forward and testify. Because without the evidence, the judges cannot sentence anybody. We need to stop the corruption that may be there in the criminal justice system, you know.
Yes. From your perspective?
I definitely agree. I think that just coming back to the conviction rate and how many cases are thrown out because or sent back to the police for more investigation, the backlog on that amount of investigations is a lot. And when that can be addressed successfully, I think that there would be an increase in the court proceedings and possible conviction rates and getting those people off the streets. And on the same tone, I think the parole conditions should be revised as well. For violent crime offenders, repeat offenders, there should be definitely looked at parole.
Thank you so much to both of you for being here this morning. That was the chairperson of the South African Human Rights Commission, Advocate Bongani Majola, as well as Lorraine Clausen. She's a criminologist as well as a researcher at the AfriForum Research Institute. But right now, as promised earlier, Minister of Finance, Mbuli Gigaba, is about to speak. Let's go live to the Johannesburg Stock Exchange.
Confidence, thereby laying the foundation for an economic recovery. Details of the key areas are listed in the table attached, which which I will refer later. These interventions are the beginning of a response program that will be unpacked in the medium-term budget policy statement and the 2018 budget. The President will monitor and coordinate implementation to ensure the timelines are met. The Minister of Finance has also committed to exploring an economic support package within existing fiscal resources. The support package will be designed to enhance the 9-point plan structural reform program and will depend on the government's ability to find resources through reprioritization from areas of slack towards areas with higher potential for growth and employment. Any support package will be dependent on progress in implementing these interventions. At the medium-term budget policy statement, we will be able to more comprehensively speak to our economic outlook and growth prospects. It is critical that we go into the MTBPS having demonstrated progress in unlocking growth. We've made progress on resolving electricity constraints and improving labor relations and the ease of doing business. The global economy presents opportunities, including growth in some of our major trading partners, a recovery in commodity prices, and strong capital inflows into emerging markets. Let's take advantage of these opportunities. We also call upon all social partners to engage proactively on practical initiatives to bring about inclusive growth and economic transformation. We need all our collective leadership, initiative, imagination, and ingenuity. Achieving the NDP's Vision 2030 requires all of us to find common cause for the sake of all South Africans. Now, there are 13 action points that we announce in this regard. As I have indicated earlier, to support both business and consumer confidence and lay the foundation for an economic recovery. To start with fiscal policy. Now, what we have done is to identify these action points, develop action items under each one of them in detail, attach alongside each action item a responsible minister and timelines by which this must have been delivered. Starting with fiscal policy, we must finalize a sustainable wage agreement. And the responsible minister is the Minister for the Public Service and Administration. That must happen by February 2018. You will all know that this is the year for public sector wage negotiations. The second action item is finalizing the infrastructure budget facility, about which I spoke during our budget vote in May this year. That will be done by the Minister of Finance by October 2017. In many instances, when I refer to October 2017, you must keep in mind that I'm referring to things that will be elaborated in the medium-term budget policy statement. Number two, financial sector and tax policy. There are 4 action steps to be taken there. Convene the Financial Sector Summit to quantify transformation targets, including for low-income housing and transformational agriculture, by the Minister of Finance. Timeline is December 2017. Now, you will get copies of these, so I'm sure you don't have to scribble copiously. Second action item is bringing down banking costs by implementing the Twin Peaks legislation by the Minister of Finance. Timeline is February 2018. Work with DTI on targeted debt relief for the most vulnerable. For example, in cases of reckless lending, that is by the Minister of Finance. The timeline is February 2018. And introducing microinsurance framework and review cooperatives bank framework by the Minister of Finance, February 2018. Number 3, leveraging public procurement. There are 3 action items under that. Implement the amended PPFA regulations by the Minister of Finance, July 2017, that's been done. Finalize the public procurement bill by the Minister of Finance. We expect that to be done by March 2018. The bill will now be released for public comment, and it will go through the necessary processes, taken to Parliament, to the Standing Committee on Finance, be discussed, taken to Parliament for the National Assembly for debate, second reading debate. We hope that will be done by March 2018. And thirdly, finalize complementary government fund. A complementary government fund aimed at financing SMMEs in startup phase. that is by the Minister of Small Business and Cooperatives Development. We expect that to be done by February 2018. Number 4, recapitalization of state-owned enterprises and government guarantees. There are 5 action items under that. 5.1, continue engagements on framework for the disposal of non-core assets. By the Minister of Finance, timeline is March 2018. Conduct a detailed audit of non-strategic assets of state-owned enterprises aimed at strengthening the SOE balance sheets. By the Minister of Finance by March 2018. Finalize recapitalization of SAA and the South African Post Office by the Minister of Finance, August 2017. Reduce the issuance of government guarantees, especially for operational reasons. That is the responsibility of Cabinet by October 2017. You will remember in this regard that I have raised concerns that the government guarantees, we need to strategically use them, utilize them to support infrastructure investments and capital expansion, rather than to finance operations and losses and inefficiencies in the SOEs. And we must determine the consequences of SOE non-adherence to the guarantee conditions. That is the responsibility of government by October 2017. Number 5, broader SOE reforms. There are 6 action items arising under that heading. We must implement private sector participation framework by March 2018, that's the Minister of Finance. Implement the remuneration framework, the Minister of Public Enterprises by March 2018. Finalize the board appointment framework by the Minister of Public Service and Administration by March 2018. This is quite important to establish standardization across the SOE environment, regardless of which department is a shareholder department, to ensure that we all have a common and standard understanding of the procedures for appointments of boards, as well as the term of office of board members, the standards we expect of board members, how they get appointed, how they get evaluated and assessed. We must table the draft shareholder management bill. That's the responsibility of the Minister of Public Enterprises. We expect that to be concluded by March 2018. The bill has been finalized for public comment, and it will soon be released for public comment. And then after that, it will go back to Cabinet for final approval in order to be referred to the National Assembly. Then we must implement a framework for the determination and costing of developmental mandates of state-owned enterprises. That's the responsibility of the Minister of Finance by March 2018. And we must approve the terms of reference for implementation of the Remuneration Standards Oversight Committee. That is the responsibility of Cabinet by September 2017. Action 6, private sector participation framework. We must engage other departments on PSP framework by the Minister of Finance, July 2017. We must provide broader guidance on sectors or asset classes for public sector participation and decide whether sector-specific PSP frameworks are needed. That's the responsibility of all shareholder ministries by October 2017. We must present potential projects for PSP to line departments, technical task team and interministerial committee. That is by all state-owned enterprises by November 2017. We must approve PSP projects as outlined in the governance framework proposed in the PSP framework. That is again the responsibility of all shareholder ministers, must be done by March 2018. And we must include PSP projects in shareholder compacts and corporate plan for subsequent implementation. That is the responsibility of all shareholder ministers by March 2018. Action 7, coasting developmental mandates. We must consult other SOEs on coasting of developmental mandates. That's the responsibility of the Minister of Finance by August 2017. We must implement mechanisms to effect outcomes through corporate plans. That is by the Minister of Finance, timeline August 2017. We must roll out the template for inclusion in the 2018 corporate plans. The Minister of Finance, September 2017. And monitor implementation through quarterly reports and annual reports and corporate plans. Minister of Finance, March 2018. Action 8, energy. We must approach NERSA regarding ESCOM hardships. That will be the responsibility of ESCOM itself. Timeline is July 2017. We must develop the case for ESCOM soft support until tariff adjustment in 2018 and submit to Treasury and the ESCOM board. That is the responsibility of ESCOM. Timeline is July 2017. We must finalize the lowest cost integrated energy plan and integrated resource plan, taking into account extensive comments received during public consultation. That is by the Minister of Energy. The timeline is February 2018. Review the pace and scale of rollout under the circumstances of ESCOM hardships and overcapacity up to 2021. That is the Minister of Energy. Timeline is August 2017. And we must review the level of participation by black industrialists and develop a strategy to increase it. That is the responsibility of the Minister of Energy. Timeline is August 2017. Action 9, SAA. We must finalize the appointment of the new CEO. That is the responsibility of the Minister of Finance by July 2017. We must finalize and implement the 5-year turnaround strategy. That is the responsibility of the Minister of Finance. The timeline is December 2019. We must negotiate with lenders to extend debt to longer term. That is the responsibility of the Minister of Finance. Timeline is October 2017. Action 10. Telecommunications. There are 5 action items under that. Number 1 is to conduct a high-level study on the wholesale open access network spectrum needs, with a view to license the remainder to the industry. That is the responsibility of the Minister of Telecommunications and Public and Postal Services. Timeline is August 2017. We must issue a policy directive mandating ICASA to commence the licensing process. It is the responsibility of the Minister of Telecommunications. Timeline is December 2017. We must complete the spectrum licensing process. It is the responsibility of the Minister of Telecommunications. Timeline is December 2018. We must direct the Competition Commission to investigate the data prices. That's the responsibility of the Ministers of Telecommunications and Economic Development. The timeline is July 2017. And we must commence the rollout of Phase 1 of South Africa Connect broadband program. It is the responsibility of the Minister of Telecommunications. The timeline is August 2017. Action 11, post-bank licensing. We must implement amendments of the enabling we must amend the enabling legislation for the licensing of the post-bank. It is the responsibility of both the Ministers of Telecommunications and the Minister of Finance. Timeline is December 2017. Action 12, Minerals and Petroleum Resources Development Act Amendment Bill. We must finalize the MPRDA Amendment Bill in a manner that reflects the inputs of civil society, labor and industry solicited through the public consultation process. That is by the Minister of Mineral Resources. The timeline is December 2017. Action 13, broad-based socio-economic empowerment charter for the South African mining and minerals industry. You will know that the charter has been gazetted by the Minister of Mineral Resources. And what we say is that there must be further engagements with civil society, labor and industry. Action 14, Regulation of Land Holdings Bill. We must table regulations, the regulation of Land Holdings Bill in Parliament after processing by a multidisciplinary ministerial think tank, the NJSC and the NETLEC. It's the responsibility of the Minister of Rural Development and Land Reform. The timeline is 2017. It is important in relation to these 14 action points. I earlier made a mistake and said there are 13. In relation to these 14 action points, that we need to emphasize the principle of leadership, united action. During these difficult economic times, we need the unity in action and unity in purpose of all the relevant role players and leadership, particularly emanating from government, for us to be able to restore confidence in the economy and restore growth. All of these items that we have announced are drawn from the 9-point plan, and whilst they do not in themselves constitute an overarching economic recovery plan, they constitute, however, an important intervention to restore confidence, to demonstrate action, and that we have an action plan by which we as government are prepared to be held responsible. All of the ministers who have been mentioned in relation to this action plan understand the responsibility we jointly share to comply with our action plans and implement the action items, the details of which will, as you notice, be availed as the time goes on, so that we provide the necessary confidence and certainty to investors and the markets. The President will continue to play a coordinating role with regard to the implementation of these action plans. And as you know, it is important to re-emphasize that at the very heart of what we are doing in this regard is to focus on growth and transformation. And so the issues of transformation are critical to the steps we are going to take and the implementation of all these action plans. The medium-term budget policy statement will elaborate and give flesh and detail to some of these items. And the different sector departments will equally do so at the relevant times. We will be continuing to engage with business on this action plan so that they understand the steps we are taking in order to reignite growth to the economy. The National Treasury remains singularly focused on this important task at hand. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. We'll open the floor for questions. So I'll take the first row, then I'll move to the second row. So we'll take about 4.